Good evening, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm going to start the meeting. Ojai City Council and Ojai Redevelopment Agency, successor agency, regular meeting at 7 p.m., May 12, 2015. Could I have roll call?
Councilmember Wyrick?
Here.
Councilmember Haney?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Blatz?
Here.
And Mayor Lara?
Here.
And Councilmember Clapp is out this evening.
Could I have Councilmember Wyrick lead us on the Pledge of Allegiance?
Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're gonna start off with some presentation. The first one is from Ventura Regional Sanitary District. Mark Logger, General Manager.
Yep. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Mark Lawler. I'm the General Manager for Ventura Regional Sanitation District, and it's nice to see you again. I come up once a year at the direction of our board during our retreat. They want me to come out and meet our members that we do service for. So I passed out a little thing here. I'm not going to go through this page by page, and I don't have an overhead. This is more for your information after the fact or to discuss with your staff whenever you have time. But what I'll just do is give you the 40,000-foot flyover, because some of you have heard this before, and those that haven't, I mean, I'm always available for questions if you'd like. But we're a public agency. We're established in 1970 under the California Health and Sanitation Codes. What makes us a little different than most public agencies is we're truly a service-based agency, and that means, what we mean by that is we have no tax base. All the monies that we receive, all the services we provide are for fee. And so that means on a lot of our services, we have to compete with the private sector. So unlike a lot of public agencies, we compete head-to-head with the private sector every day for all of our business. So that makes it very different. We're a very different type of a public agency. With that being said, we do have countywide jurisdiction. Our board, the way the board is made up, there's 9 members. 8 of the 10 cities in the county appoint a council person to sit on the board. Currently, it's Council Member Clapp from the city of Ojai. And each city appoints one, and then the special districts have a seat there too, and there's 6 special districts, and currently the way they appoint, it's on a rotational basis. So if you get a moment, I mean, I'm not going to go through this again. We provide a lot of, a variety of water, wastewater, and stormwater programs that we provide a full range of services, from line cleaning to treatment plant operations to all kinds of stormwater monitoring and compliance. So we do the full gauntlet on everything depending on what you need or what you need help with. Again, we do everything by contract, and a lot of times the cities will have us go head-to-head with the private sector for competition. The one service that you do use that we provide is our landfill. I do believe I believe Harrison's Hall for you, is that correct? Yeah, and they bring all the trash down to our landfill, which is located between the cities of Santa Paula and Fillmore. And that landfill is, if I can say anything about that landfill, it's been a remarkable partnership with the cities in the last few years. The landfill was, I'll say, underutilized for a long period of time because of who we are and the nature of who we are by a government agency. Our permit has been restricted to countywide refuse only for our solid waste component. With that being said, when the cities of Oxnard or the trash contracts came up, there is a competing interest, which is waste management. They have a facility over in Simi Valley, but we were able to negotiate a little bit more tonnage from them. So the facility is much higher utilized right now, and in the efforts to get there were a lot of concessions made by the haulers, the cities, and different people to come to different arrangements to allow that. But that's allowed us to keep we have not raised our rates in over 6 years at this point. So we've really done a good job, and the members on the board, and I know you've had several sit on that board, but we really pay a lot of attention to try to keep our services low and to try to keep the rates low for all the ratepayers, because that's on everybody's mind, because everybody that sits on our board is a public official. And so I really think that that's one thing that not only as a participating member on this council, but all your partners, there's 8 of the other cities are on that, and everybody's done a real good job with that. So that I'm like I said, I'm going to keep this a little short tonight, but I'm certainly available to answer any questions. That's the only service that I'm aware of that you're using at this point in time. So, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any council member have questions? No? Thank you, I appreciate it.
It's great to be here tonight.
And I appreciate you coming and giving a presentation.
Yep, I'm happy to do that.
And people could go on your website and find out.
Absolutely.
more
Yep.
information?
Mhm.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Second presentation is the fiscal year 2015-16 draft budget. City Manager, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. Each time this year, we roll out a proposed budget, and then we go through a series of meetings to review it and to make decisions about what's going to be funded in the coming fiscal year. And I normally start off the process by just giving you a very broad 30,000-foot overview. And so if we can get the projector going, I will present that to you this evening. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to list the meetings that we have planned to discuss the budget. But if you have other desires as far as review goes, this would be a good time to bring those up. So first of all, I'm going to go through some of the revenues that make up the budget. And I wanted to start by showing the impact of the loss of redevelopment. This community received over $150 million per year in property tax money through its redevelopment agency during the life of that agency. And in 2012, the state, in its wisdom, decided to end redevelopment in the state. And so we've been going through an unwinding process. And through that unwinding process, we're allowed to continue to receive some tax increment for contracts and agreements that we had in place at the time that it was dissolved. But for the most part, that money has gone away. So you can see the lighter colored, the bright green, I guess you'd say, is what we were getting before redevelopment was abolished. And the darker color is what we have received as through the successor agency going forward, which is quite a bit less. This money was our primary source of funding for capital improvements during the period that we were receiving it. So things like the acquisition of the museum was financed by redevelopment. The redoing of the arcade plaza was financed by redevelopment. Some of Libby Bowl was financed by redevelopment. A lot of projects that really have made our downtown viable came through this funding source, and now it's gone away. Property tax, our general fund is about $8 million, and $1.5 million of that comes from property tax. And this line, again, shows a 10-year trend as far as what property taxes are. It's been a very stable source of revenue, even during the recession. And there's a little darker colored section on the top of the last 4 years. When the state took away redevelopment agency money, about half of it worked its way to the state and helped the state solve its financial problems. But the other half was distributed to the taxing entities within the redevelopment district, and we are actually one of those taxing entities. So we actually get back a little bit of the property tax that was taken away with the other hand. Oops. Sales tax is also about $1.5 million in our general fund. You can see that during the recession years, it was pushed down considerably, and it's kind of gradually recovered over the years. The sales tax recovery has not been very robust, in my opinion. It's been steady, but it's been a struggle for our merchants to keep going. And we again see a continuing rise, but not a drastic rise in that funding source. Our biggest source of funding is the transient occupancy tax, which is also called the hotel tax or the bed tax. When you stay here, you pay 10% towards the city's general fund and 1% towards advertising. And as this chart shows, and I should say that the amount of transient occupancy tax that we receive is $3 million. So it's equal to the property tax and the sales tax put together. And it was hit very hard during the recession. You can see the decline between 7-8 and 9-10 and 10-11 was pretty steep. And that caused a retrenchment in our services and put us in a situation where we have a very lean operation. After the recession, the City Council made one of its highest priorities addressing the infrastructure in the community. And as you saw earlier, we didn't have redevelopment anymore to take that role. And so what we've done is we've taken the majority of the growth in the bed tax and put it into the capital improvement fund. So for the last couple years, including the proposed budget that you see in front of you, 20% of the bed tax is put into the capital improvement fund. And that's what's allowing us to continue to work on streets and other public improvements. So this chart shows how much we've spent over the years on public improvements. And you can probably guess that that really, really tall bar in the middle is when we built Libby Bowl. But Libby Bowl was partially paid for with tax money, but mostly paid for by donations from the community. But you can see that because of our use of the TOT, or the transient occupancy tax for capital improvements, we've been able to actually increase the amount of money that we're spending on capital improvements. Now, in the current year, we've actually held over our paving program so that we can double it up and do it more efficiently this summer. So we have a short bar this year and a much taller bar next year. But the trend is going to continue to be upward as far as our ability to do capital improvements. The other thing that sort of joins this is when you have money that's dedicated to capital improvements, it's easier to get donations and grants because you can use the money for matching grants, and donors often want to put in the last dollar, not all the dollars. So we've been pretty successful in getting more grant money and more donation money because of our commitment to the capital improvements. So our budget philosophy over the past 4 or 5 years has been to keep permanent staffing lean, to use contract services strategically, to dedicate the TOT growth to capital improvements, and to prepare for future challenges. And that philosophy carries through in the proposed budget that's before you. By the numbers, our general fund is $8.3 million. All of our operating funds together is a little over $10 million. We have certain operating funds like the transit fund we can't mix those funds into the general fund, but we can add them on and say that's part of our operation, and that's why that number's higher. Our next year capital improvement budget is $2.7 million. We have 32 full-time equivalents. Our reserves have been built up now to $3.4 million, which is 40% of the general fund. And just as a point of reference, the council goal is to have reserves of 50%, so we're very close now. And it's taken a number of years since the recession to get to that point. As far as staffing goes, the proposed budget drops the half-time assistant planner, but we add 56 hours per week of contract planner. We've seen an increase both in the amount of private work that's coming through us and also public projects that are going through, so we really do need more planning services. We've also recently added contract clerical work to the Community Development Department to free up the planners to do planning work, and that's carried through in the budget. And then we have a 30-hour per week part-time code compliance officer, and that's carried on. So other than that, our staffing remains the same, which I would characterize as being lean. One of the challenges that we face is that retirement system rates are going up. There's $80,000 in the proposed budget that just represents the increase in the cost of retirement. And PERS is raising the rates because they lost money during the recession, because they've changed their expectations for life expectancy based on actuarial assumptions, and they've lowered the estimated rate of return on their investments. But the state did approve, or actually mandate, a lower tier retirement for employees who are new to the system after 2012. So eventually, as that lower tier covers more and more employees, retirement rates will go down, and we'll see this, but probably not in our lifetimes, over the very long haul correct itself. Retiring medical, we had a very generous program a number of years ago, and recently the council has restructured that and provided a minimum benefit, the minimum that's allowed under the system. But we still have an unfunded liability that's fairly substantial. So a year ago, we established a pre-funding account and put $100,000 into it. This budget proposes putting another $100,000 into it. That money earns a phenomenally high interest rate because it's invested through PERS, and it also provides a buffer so that if we get into hard years and we still have retiree medical to pay, we can draw on this money. So this gets to the proposed schedule. This evening, the presentation that you're having right now is all we have planned. We have a closed session at the end of the May 26th meeting to talk about employee compensation. We then have a workshop prior to the June 9th meeting, and a public hearing at the June 9th meeting. And I expect that that public hearing will primarily be hearing from the commissions and from several outside agencies that we've either funded or who are requesting funding. We have a second workshop scheduled prior to the June 23rd meeting. We have a discussion item on the June 23rd meeting, and if you're ready to adopt it at that time, you can. If not, I've proposed a special meeting on June 30th, which could take up whatever slack is there. So that's the proposed schedule, and we'd be open to any modifications to that you would like to suggest. So that concludes the presentation.
Any questions for staff?
Yes.
Councilmember
Mainly
Wiley.
procedural, really, because I think that's what's appropriate here
Yeah, I think so.
today. You mentioned agencies with special requests, would it be advisable ask that they submit those before the workshop rather than, basically set a deadline? So
Yes.
that they can be vetted before the workshop?
Yes, and we have in fact done that, and we will not only receive those requests, but we'll analyze them for you in terms of looking at their past financial performance and so forth.
And the only other procedural question I want to ask is that this is my first round going through this, along with Councilman Haney here. And but I did find myself on the Budget Audit Committee, and I've just I was asking the city manager about the role for that, and I was just thinking about the right way, because I feel a certain responsibility, since the mayor and I are on the Budget Audit Committee, to maybe dig into some specific issues. But on the other hand, I'm sensitive to the fact that we don't necessarily need to have a lot of people coming together just to answer questions. So has the protocol in the past been to say, have the two people on the Budget Audit Committee maybe get together, ask questions, prepare some specific focus for the workshop, or is that something not done? I'm just asking.
Well, that hasn't been done in the past, but
Okay.
but if you think it would be constructive, there's it's certainly something that could be done.
Yeah, I haven't done that in the past. The last 2 years, what we've done is we brought up sections, and then we've all asked questions on that specific question. I'm not, if we want to do a workshop, if it's a desire of the council to just do a workshop specifically on this and answer questions.
And that's fine
I
with
could
me.
that's fine with me, too.
I have some specific things as I dig into this that I'd like to go into, and I'm fine with just doing that individually, if that's where the rest of the council's comfortable with that, just do some research on that singularly. And then I guess it would be appropriate how would it be appropriate to prepare for the workshop with what I may be coming up with that I want to look at.
Yeah, I think just let me know what issues you'd like to bring
Okay.
forward to the council as a whole, and then
Okay.
we'll make sure that we dedicate time to it.
Okay.
And it'll probably fit into our structure at any rate.
I just wanted to get a
Yeah,
sense of the
and
council.
it's a pretty organized process,
Right.
and we go through it pretty painstakingly, to tell you the truth, section by section. So we're looking at the individual parts. And I
Right.
think they'll have plenty of time to ask specific questions.
Okay.
The only thing that I see, because of the way I work, is I like to look at everything as a whole.
Yes.
And per se, that's why I like your ideas of doing a workshop for everything other than specific, but I know it is a pretty thick budget book, and I know it will take time. And again, if it's a desire of the council to go through everything, I'm not against it. If you would want to look at sections through it and kind of do it on their own, we could do that too. I don't know if the other council members, Councilmember Haney, if you have a preference.
Can I be honest to everyone? I'm scared shitless of it, but, no, I'm here to learn. It's the first time around, so I'm going to accept the way it has been and learn from it. So,
Well, Mayor Pro Tem Blatz, do you have a preference on what to do it?
I think the
section
way
by
that we've done
section?
it over the last several years has worked fine.
Okay.
And I think going through it department by department, request by request as we get to it, has been logically in place, and then looking at it from an overview at the end, I think is at least to me, a very systematic way to go through it.
Yeah. And I would encourage any council member, including myself, if he has specific questions on specific items, to email it to our city manager, and that way everyone's aware of it and could probably save more time, and the public has the ability to respond to the questions or look at the questions and answers.
And if I get into details, you know, because I used to manage this kind of process, so I'm interested in it, obviously, for another agency. But I'll try to compile everything in very understandable format to forward to the city manager, so I'm not bogging everyone down in unnecessary detail, just some thoughts.
And just so that the public knows, Councilmember Wyrick does have a PhD on economics. So, any other questions for staff?
No, thank you, Rob.
No. Any other questions? No. All right. Well, we're going to move from that presentation to Commission's report. The Commission report is a time set aside during the first meeting of each month for the chair or representatives of any of the 4 city commissions and Building Appeals Board to make a brief verbal report on activities to the city council and communities. These reports are intended to be informational. No action will be discussed or taken. And I do see the chairs of the Building Appeals Board, but he's deferring to Board Member Hanson.
Yes, I'm Dale Hanson, and I am a member of the city's Housing Authority and the Building Appeal Board. We, at our last meeting, did go over and give the recommendations for the second unit program. And then at our next meeting, which I think is on the 19th, we're going to look at the vacant building program and discuss that and see what we can do to take care of the vacant buildings in Ojai. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do apologize. I did say last time that we'd remove that item to this agenda because of not being a full quorum. I moved it. It'll be the first one on the next agenda. So thank you. I did see Mr. Foster, Chair Foster.
I'm Steve Foster, Planning Commission Chair. We actually had a fairly light agenda at our last meeting. We looked at a parking lot at 832 East Ojai Avenue for paving, landscaping, and renovation, and did approve that project. It actually was quite an improvement from a rather deteriorated property, so we're happy to see what was going on there. It was approached a little backwards by the applicant, but we were able to work our way through that. Other than that, we had a discussion item, and that was pertaining to our pre-meeting conversation that we actually held here kind of got underway at our last city council meeting. And we're just eagerly looking forward to the May 26th joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the City Council. We're looking forward to a discussion and the opportunity to present pretty much how we feel about what's been going on, and we'll leave it at that for now. Question?
Any questions for Chair Foster? No, we look forward to that joint meeting.
We do too. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a commission report by Mr. McClary. Is that for the arts or Park and Rec or both?
Just for recreation, and no, I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Parks Commission, but I just want to make a very quick announcement to, again, invite the members of the council and the community to our second annual Recreation Department Open House. It'll be this Saturday at the Boyd Center at Sarzati Park from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. There'll be lots of things for kids to enjoy, bouncy house, some raffles, prizes will be given out. And of course, we'll be sampling a lot of the great programs that we have at the Recreation Department. So again, this Saturday at Sarzati Park from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Hope you all can make it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I don't see any other commissioners out there, so I'm going to move on to public communications. Is a time set aside during the meeting for members of the public to address the city council's / successor agency board on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at the time may be briefly discussed by the council member board and will generally be referred to staff and or placed on the subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken. Persons wishing to address the council board are requested to fill out a speaker's card prior to the council board reaching this point on the agenda. Comments must be limited to 3 minutes or less. Now, I did request to Flo if they could give us an update. So I'm going to start with them since we've been starting with presentations. I'm going to start with Mr. Blatz, or not to be, Mr. Daddy. Sorry.
Good evening, Bob Daddy, Ojai Flow. We really need to let you and the community know some of the things that have come up a little bit differently. Flow has been repurposed, we're incorporated, and the next council meeting, the chair, Mr. McPherson, will come and explain the reason that we've changed to a 501c4 and what it does for us, the community, and what we need to do. We're up to our ears in water stuff, unlike everybody else. We've had a number of things come up. So I'll tell you where we are, and I'll tell you what happened here. We're in pretty good shape. We're about a third, 40% of the way through this thing. We're on budget. We understand what we're needing to do. We're keeping up with that. We're pressing and making sure that we pay for those things we need to. I want to thank the city, Mr. Clark, Mr. McClary, and I know you probably read the manager's report on the city council website. I would like to advise the community to read the city manager's report on the website, because there's very important information as to where we go with this water, and that's kept up very well, and it's pretty important stuff. What's happened now is we have all these very complicated things where you can't say my water bill's too high. So we have certain things, and then in order to just have a seat at the table and talk, we have to have different standings. And Ojai Flow does not have standings in certain items. So the prior rate case, where they established the rules back in 2011, 12, 13, and prior years, we're having some issues come up now, and we're getting these things called advice letters, where Golden State Water sends a note to the PUC and says, hey, do you remember that well that's on the abandoned well list that I can provide for you? We'd like $2.2 million to add to the rates for that. It's time for the people to pay for that. Then we get another advice letter. And that advice letter says the people of Ojai excelled in their water conservation. And therefore, we were guaranteed a rate of return. We were guaranteed we would collect so much money out of this community, and they fell $1.1 million short because that's how much water we didn't waste. We cut back, we conserved. Well, the way the PUC has set up this system is we need probably to pay that money back for past years. Where we run into this headlong argument is we're being penalized to conserve. We're in the middle of a water rate case. We've already made an agreement 2.5 years ago. And now we have an executive order to change the system and what we do and how we're doing it, and come up with a different process and program. And we get water from 2 different sources. One has got a 25% mandatory cutback, which is Casitas. I believe they're probably a tier 6. The other one, and by the way, they're a wholesaler and a retailer. Golden State is a pumper and a purchaser of water. We're at a tier 8 with them, and we're at a 36% mandatory cutback. So as we're going through this, and then we have this water collection agency thing, and our numbers, Advocate Judge Long comes in and issues a directive that I'm going to have Mr. Blatz, he's our attorney on this case, explain to you in more detail. Comes in and says, we want to restate testimony. So what I'm really here to tell you, he'll give you the meat of that. I'm here to tell you something different. When I came to you and said we needed money, and I understood the scope, and I checked with Claremont and other cities and figured out where we were and what we needed to be able to take this task and finish this task on this new water rate increase, we didn't anticipate that we were going to have this executive order for up to 36% water cutback. We didn't anticipate that we were going to have new hearings and different types of hearings. We didn't anticipate that a few days ago, I believe it was Friday, I think, 5:27 on Friday, we get this, hey, the game's changed, it's all over, we're going to start again, we're going to include all this new stuff. So what I do need to tell the council is, I'm probably going to be back, and I'm probably going to tell you either our scope has been increased by half again, or maybe doubled, and I will be back once we can understand how much of this new situation we have on our hands, where we're going to go. I wanted to give you a heads up that I'm afraid I'm going to be back asking some more money should the council decide they want to pursue this new opportunity. I see it as an opportunity and an opening. And with that, I'm going to let our city attorney, excuse me, Mr. Summers, I am going to let Ojai Flow's attorney, representing the city on the water rate case, explain to you how this thing works and what happens. Now, we beat Golden State twice in court, Superior Court. They lost an appeals court, and they promptly filed for a rehearing. So we're still fighting on a whole bunch of fronts, and it was just time to bring everybody up to speed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Blatz?
You're going to get the question.
Thank you, Bob, for naming me city attorney. I humbly I'll leave that to you guys to decide. As Bob kind of set the table, first of all, I'm Ryan Blatz. I'm the attorney for Ojai Flow, as most of you, if not everyone in here, already are aware. We're right now, there's a couple things going on. So first, I want to update you and thank the council for all their support as we start. And even before I get started with the Ojai Flow stuff, I know it's on the consent calendar as the M1 zoning situation, which directly affects me. I want to thank the council for their attention to that matter before I get started. First of all, before I get to the PUC side of things, there's a Court of Appeal case. Obviously, I'm sure the council's aware, we've made the city aware as these rulings have come in, that we were victorious in the Court of Appeal case, which was a monumental victory we're very excited about, and the Court of Appeal has certified that decision for publication. So at this point, the idea that Mello-Roos can be used, as the city of Ojai has supported and Casitas has moved forward with, that is a legal methodology for funding the takeover of Golden State Water. Now, what's happened subsequent to that is Golden State filed what's called a petition for rehearing, which will be determined very soon. And that petition is essentially saying everything that we think was wrong in that hearing should be started over and completely heard from the beginning. We don't think there's a lot of merit to their petition. We've answered it. I should say we've worked hand in hand with Casitas to make sure it was answered properly, and Ojai Flow didn't really need to file a responsive document to that as well, but we're pending that decision. Subsequent to that decision, Golden State will most likely attempt to appeal it to the state Supreme Court. At that point, the state Supreme Court will make a determination whether they want to hear the case. If they don't, then we'll be able to move forward, or I should say Casitas will then move forward per their schedule for an eminent domain takeover. We don't know yet how things are going to unfold, but they're moving fairly quickly. So on the Court of Appeal side, that's the current situation. On the public utility case side, we have gone through the initial process of requesting information, receiving information, and we're actually still going back and forth on that. Believe it or not, I'm sure this will be a huge surprise, a lot of the information we asked Golden State for, they refused to respond to. They didn't want to turn it over. So we are in the process of now, we filed what's called a motion to compel. In other words, we asked the administrative law judge to order them to answer some of the questions. We're getting some of those answers in. We're requesting other things. Evidentiary hearings are set for the end of this month and the beginning of next month. At that time, we will be presenting all the issues that are important for Ojai. And just to give the council a real quick overview of some of the stuff we're talking about, over the next 3 years, and it's perfect because Mr. Clark, city manager, just put up a capital expenditure graph for the city of Ojai. Well, the capital expenditures proposed by Golden State as of today for 2015, 16, and 17 equal $7.5 million, roughly. $7.5 million of infrastructure investment, which, according to what I wrote down, I think the city's budget this year is 2.7, and that's higher than normal. It is probably double
what the city would be putting in the next 3 years in infrastructure for the remaining part of the city, all for the water system. So we are working our tails off trying to find out every reason why and contest every reason why they're supporting these particular projects. I've also been personally on the phone with Casitas saying, hey, if any of these projects you disagree with, which is an awkward position for them right now, but we said, hey, if there's anything that will support these projects either being denied, which is what we ultimately want, or at least being delayed as long as possible so that the final decision on whether these large infrastructure projects are needed is determined by Casitas rather than by the Public Utility Commission, that's what we're at least asking for. So we're asking to deny them or at least prolong them so that if new ownership is going to take shape, they're the ones making the decisions on these. Along with that, as Bob pointed out, we have this really strange situation already. The Public Utility Commission is not used to dealing with essentially a lame duck water company that is on their way out, as Golden State is at this point. All indications are that we will be able to take them over, but they're not out yet. So the Public Utility Commission has a weird situation trying to regulate utility prices for 3 years when they may or may not still be around. On top of that, in the middle of this, the governor throws in a executive order that says mandatory conservation across the board. The Water Resource Board for California came down on Ojai with, and Bob was accurate, a 36% reduction. Now, we don't get a chance to really argue these numbers. These numbers are not something that happened in the Public Utility Commission. They happened from the State Water Resource Board. So these are numbers that in the Public Utility Commission case were essentially passed down. They're trying to figure out how to use these numbers and also appropriately create a rate that gives Golden State the compensation they need to cover their expenditures and their profit that's built in, but they've never really had to deal with this situation before. So every piece of testimony that's already been submitted in this case, essentially we are, in the final stretch near the finish line. The administrative law judge ordered everyone to go back and reissue all of the testimony if necessary based on these new edicts from the state. I have personally been in multiple settlement conferences regarding this over the last couple of weeks, and I praise the city as well for not only their involvement, but Mr. McClary's involvement he's been on top of it the entire time. We've been working together to make sure Ojai is represented the best they can. But we went through settlement conferences literally last Monday about projected water sales, and then a half a week later, the administrative law judge says, we may have to throw all this out and start over. We don't know how to deal with this situation. What I do know and what I do have answers for are minimal, but we've gotten every answer we possibly can out of the Public Utility Commission. There will be a ruling that's come down. It's called Rule 14.1 that Golden State has regarding these types of emergency water situations. That rule is still getting put into place. At the end of this month, or I should say, I think they were saying the beginning or middle of next month, there will be public hearings in each locale, including in Ojai regarding Golden State, about how this new rule will affect the community, and there will be input allowed from the community. So it's something that I've already explained to Mr. McClary, the city will probably want to be on the ball on and have some involvement in as is necessary, as will Ojai Flow. Now, these public hearings will have how much input we really get to have, we don't know yet, but this is what's coming down the road. At that point, they're going to create some sort of penalty tier structure. I asked specifically in one of these settlement conferences, what methods does Golden State have if you've already penalized people enough using your rates to where they've reduced water usage for economic reasons? What other reasons, how can you promote this conservation, this huge number, if the economics of it have already kind of taken place? They have very little answers. One, they literally told me in the settlement conference, they said, well, we can turn off people's faucets. Then they retreaded and said, well, we can't turn them off. We have to give them a notice. We might do reducers. Hypothetically, there's some other avenues they have to literally reduce the water usage by an individual user. That's still getting figured out exactly. But their main tool is rates, which leaves Ojai in a really weird situation that we don't have a great answer for yet. as the PhD in economics, as Mr. Lara pointed out, that's an answer better for you, Mr. Wyrick, than anyone else's. How will that economically affect our community? We have a large amount of water conservation due to economic reasons. Now they only have one way to force another 6% reduction, and it's really based on economics. That's one part of this that we're still figuring out, and that's part of the PUC case we are involved in. Then there's a whole nother element to it, which is the WRAM, which many of you are aware is the water rate adjustment mechanism, which recoups profit for water that is forecasted as being sold and then isn't sold. They make up revenue from that. The Public Utility Commission just decided that they're going to separate out the WRAM aspect of this conservation edict separately and completely. So there's a rulemaking case about how the WRAM works, and then there is the rate-making case for how the rates in Ojai and other communities will work. I've explained this to Mr. McClary, and I think he understands, where we're at and how things have kind of changed in the landscape a little bit. But the moving forward, that's another decision that the council needs to make, is whether or not they want to look to us to represent essentially the same way we're representing the city of Ojai through Ojai Flow in the WRAM case. How much policy change we can make, we don't know unless we're there. But the information gathering that comes from being in on the conversation and understanding how it works on the inside is really important. And there's no question this is going to have a huge impact on our community for not only the situation with the rates that already exist that we know we've been working on Golden State for a long time, but with this weird WRAM mechanism and the huge amount of conservation, the percentage at 36% that's been handed down to the Ojai Service District. How all this is going to get handled, I don't have all the answers for yet, but I want to make sure the council's aware of what's going on and how complicated this is. And you've seen the county come in here and talk about moratoriums on wells and things like that. Everybody on the state and local level is scrambling around to get an answer to how this is going to happen. And we're still, siphoning off as much information as we can. In addition to the city's support, their specific protest to Golden State that came in the form of a resolution a long time ago before the election happened, I just wanted to point out that was actually cited in the Court of Appeal decision that we had the support of the City Council. They didn't mention some of the other support we had, but implicitly in there was also the school district and the other organizations in town that supported it, and they highlighted the 87% vote. So again, I just want to reiterate how important and how thankful we are that that support existed and that it's still we're still trading on that support as being an important part of what's still going on as litigation. Specifically in the public utility case, we're addressing the $7 million plus in infrastructure stuff that it seems like Golden State is very anxious to put as much investment into the ground at this moment as they can when they waited for so long before that. I believe that our election and what's been going on in response to that is a reason why they're trying to get as much value in the system into the ground, so we need to fight on that as many levels as we can. And in addition to that, we are attacking directly the issues of the fire hydrant safety issues, valve and maintenance issues, as well as emergency responsiveness. We've had difficulty getting information from Golden State. They've objected on all kinds of different levels, including saying that valve locations were secret information and were a security risk, which I think is funny because if anybody's noticed, they've been spray painting in bright blue all around town for the last couple months. But we've been dealing with that as well, and we did have the administrative law judge order them to turn over some information that directly was their emergency responsiveness to the boil water notice of last year or the year before that Mr. Clark and the council were very concerned about. So we've been working really hard to get some of the specifics on that. Other than that, that's pretty much that's a lot of information I know that you guys have for what's going on. I wanted to make sure you were up to speed so that if you had any questions or concerns or wondered anything that was going on, I wanted to make sure that the council's well aware of it. And we do potentially foresee there is, this has mutated into something a little different than when we started. Whether the council wishes us to continue to engage in it in some of the things that we see are as important, but is ultimately the council's decision, that'll be up to you. But there are some of those issues that, although we've done our best to try and keep, and we are currently under budget, that there are going to be some extra things that if we decide we're going to get involved in, that they may require some extra costs, not substantial, but we need to revisit that as we don't have all the specific answers at this point. But we do feel like we're getting traction. There's no question that this last settlement conference I had, and Mr. McClary, I spoke to him about it already. Golden State has agreed, right now, thank you guys, but they agreed not to charge us for any of the lobbying costs or legal fees associated with the eminent domain takeover, as if we really needed to beg them not to have to pay them for the money that we were using to get rid of them. But in response to that in this rate case, you won't believe it, they created what I call a $1 million slush fund. They created a $1 million separate fund that they want to get approved by the Public Utility Commission that is unearmarked, unallocated money to be used to what they call protecting their rights in their service districts. And I said, well, is any of this specifically excluded from certain types of uses like contesting an eminent domain or anything else? And they said no. So essentially they want $1 million fund for the service area, for the region, so not just Ojai, but that money could be potentially allocated any way they want, is my understanding. And hypothetically, they could allocate this $1 million and spend the whole $1 million in Ojai or another community like it to contest what they did. Now, we know that on political efforts, they spent roughly, or at least a little bit over $250,000 in our election, where Ojai Flow raised about $50,000. So they were 5 to 1 as big. That doesn't count all the legal fees and some of the stuff that they're able to tuck into different columns because they weren't specifically public relations people they were hiring. There were a number of attorneys who came and spoke and things like that. It's absolutely amazing what we've been able to do against such a overbearing opponent with so much money, but we are not going to stop. The way I've described it to many people I know and the people in the community is I say, we can't collectively drop an anvil on the head of Golden State. We're doing everything, but we can keep running up and kicking them in the shin until they get really upset with us. So that's my goal, is to keep running up and kicking them in the shin. And so far, so good. We got the Court of Appeal case going positively. The public utility case is moving in the right direction. And with that, I know there's a lot of information, but I want to make sure, again, the council's up to speed. And if you have any questions, I'd appreciate it.
Great. Any questions? Councilmember Wyrick?
One comment I want to make, and make sure that everyone here tonight and the public at large understands. Not only was the protest cited in the appeals case, but in both the Superior Court case and the appeals court case, a prominent discussion during testimony and in the written opinion about the 87% vote. So your vote mattered. It mattered. And I just, the community really needs to understand that really was not just a fact that it passed with a majority vote, but that was a very high majority vote has been cited, and apparently, at least it looks to me anyway, to be affecting the judges in this situation.
Right. I wouldn't say, I don't want to put words in the justices or judge mouth in the two different cases that we've had, but you're absolutely correct. The idea that any legal body in our country would completely ignore the populace and the idea how they want things voted in certain circumstances, not always, but in this circumstance, they've clearly latched onto that as being an important aspect. And one really telling anecdote from the Court of Appeal case, I'll just mention real quickly, is the judge said, well, this is essentially how you guys want to spend your money. Why should we care how you guys want to spend your money? If you guys want to be wrong about it, be wrong. If you want to be right. But why should we be able to tell you how you want to spend your money? And that's absolutely the truth. The people of Ojai have come together to say collectively, we understand that to end what we see as something that's not going correctly, we need to come up with our own money and raise our money ourselves and do these things. And their support for that has been unwavering. And the Golden State has multiple times stated how the idea of what the electorate voted on shouldn't matter, and legally they've said that that should not make any impact, which I personally legally disagree with, but there's no question that it should matter. It does matter, and both courts that have issued decisions regarding this case have unwaveringly supported what the public wanted to do, and they've used that as a big part of it.
And a quick question.
Yeah,
And I'll
quick.
be done.
Yeah, we do have to
Obviously,
move
the
on.
State Water Board got numbers from Golden State. That's where everything came from in terms of the edict about conservation. I'm not going to get into the weeds on some of the inconsistencies and all of that, but I do know that the city has requested Mr. Hanford to come before us as the franchisee, for us the franchisor. And I wonder if you've gotten a response yet from Mr. Hanford with Golden State, where he's going to come and answer questions regarding the numbers.
He's coming in on June 9th, and he's providing written materials in advance of that.
Yeah, the water forecasting is really difficult, but one thing that I brought up that I happened to notice again tonight that I talked to Mr. McClary about before the presentation is that they have a huge rebound for water usage in Ojai after 2011. I dug in as deep as I could to figure out what could explain this, because anecdotally it doesn't make sense. I believe that the renovation and reopening of the Ojai Valley Inn caused that water spike to go back up, and we're one of the communities that had this huge rebound of water usage. And as I had explained to Mr. McClary that I thought would be true, and I saw it again tonight, was that the TOT tax matches that graph as the taxes went back up. Now, the problem is the Public Utility Commission uses such a comprehensive and difficult to understand methodology for water forecasting that our arguments, as much as they had some traction, they weren't willing to change the general methodology they use for a blanket of all the areas. So we do run this really strange risk. The good news is that if our water is forecasted to be higher, then that 36% reduction is actually less, even though it gives them some of the argument to support why that amount is necessary. Unfortunately, that's something that's just out of our hands, and if there's something that the city, I'm not aware of if there's a protest available on the city level. We haven't been involved in that, but I do believe that the 36% reduction is unreasonable for the community.
Great. I'm going to take two more questions so we can move on to public communications. Councilmember Haney.
Ryan, is there any way that you and that Ojai Flow could put together some type of a paper that we could put out to the public, clarifying, the three areas that you guys are actually involved in and what you're doing? There was a lot of information given tonight, and like everyone else, my head's swimming with it. And I'm sure with each area, there's 100 questions that need to be asked, but I think the public needs to know exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it, and where we are in the process. So something short, something brief, but where we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think would be something that we could post on our website.
Absolutely. I also think is important is we're going to have in the very near future a much more informational campaign that the city and Golden State Water as well as Ojai Flow are all going to be engaged in, and I think at that time that would be appropriate as well. But absolutely, I mean, we have, although I do believe Mr. McClary could probably answer those questions for you immediately if there's something that we would, if we can help present something or write something up for his approval or the council's to disseminate, we'd be happy to.
And then the last question is, the 36%, is that based on today? Because we've been using less water over, let's say, the last 3 years. So we've already reduced our consumption. Are we going to be, have we reduced and at 20%, now we're going to be asked to reduce 36% more, which means the community is going to have to cut their water usage, and I'm just ballparking, 50-some percent?
Yes. Yeah, the simple answer is yes. The more complicated answer is we don't have the luxury of arguing it at this time, those factors that change that. So we had this steep decline. We had a rebound that the Public Utility Commission has said Ojai is separate from all other communities because they had an economic rebound that increased water usage. I'm going, there's no way in 2011 we increased water usage. We were, the whole campaign was in swing. Well, I believe a huge part of that is because of the commercial usage at the end. The Public Utility Commission had said that those numbers are separated in the residential. I can't tell you exactly where the 36% number comes from as far as what number it has to be reduced from other than the current projected numbers, but those numbers are still at issue. So if the 36% comes from the Public Utility Commission agreed upon number for forecasted sales, then until that number is decided on, we don't know what the 36% is from. What's currently in place is a proposal schedule, and all the Public Utility Commission did was take the proposed water usage schedule, add in the reduction percentages, and that's the number we have now. And what they don't know how they're going to do is whether they're going back monthly or otherwise to figure out what the right amount of rate is based on the total amount they're in revenue they're there. So the long answer is we should expect that it is going to be the most onerous number, that it's going to be the current usage number at least after it rebounded, and has to be that 36%. And part of that's based on we do have a strange significantly high per capita water usage number in our community compared to other communities, and that's partly why the reduction numbers are where they are. And again, I'm not privy to the methodology used in determining that. We're not sure exactly how they came up with that, other than we have a small community.
We do need to move on to public.
Yeah.
I just want another one,
A
just
quick
to
question,
clarify.
yeah.
And the RAM charges have been suspended
Yes.
by the state of California?
That's a good question. What happened is, originally, the city contacted Ojai Flow. We assisted the city in protesting those charges because it wasn't part of the general rate case that we've been asked to be involved in. The city protested it. In classic Public Utility Commission fashion, they said, we ignore your objection. We're moving forward with it. And a few days later, they said, well, hold on a minute. We're putting a moratorium on all of them until we figure it out. That's why there's a separate case. So there's been this completely bifurcated, as we use in the legal world, situation where the rate case is going on, but the way the WRAM will work in injunction with the reduction numbers is a completely separate case that in order for the city or for Ojai Flow or anyone else to become a party of, they have to file a separate motion that's different from the case we're already involved in.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem Blatz?
No, I'm fine. I just to piggyback on something that Councilman Haney said, the report, the summary of what you guys are doing, what Flow's doing, is pretty important because when and if it comes back before us for additional funding, when Flow comes before us, it'll be really important that the public have as much education into what Flow's doing, so that when we have the public hearing, they'll have as much information before them as they can.
Absolutely, and we would not, again, we're prematurely trying to make sure that the council doesn't become aware of this in the last minute. We don't know whether, and there may be some decisions that the council has to make first, and whatever information we can supplement them with to make that decision, we'll gladly do. Where things are and what they need to be doing, we wouldn't request it without some sort of budgeting and other stuff that we still need to figure out as well. Again, it's not a request tonight. It's just kind of a heads up in case we need to.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you guys coming in. A lot of important information out there for the public to know. And I think it'd be great once we have the informational piece that Councilmember Haney was talking about to come back and just maybe another debrief presentation would be great.
Absolutely. We're gearing up for the evidentiary hearings, which are going to be a lot of work and organizing everybody to get physically up to San Francisco for that. But I do not see any problem, and we're happy to come in anytime. And again, thank you to the council for all their support, and specifically to Mr. McClary, who's been directly involved with everything, and he's been really great, and we've been working hand in hand with him, and the city's been really supportive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public communication speaker is Joseph Gilbert.
Yeah, hello. I live in Miners Oaks, and I want to talk about glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup and Rodeo. Roundup is made by Monsanto, and Rodeo, I don't know who makes it. It's the same stuff. Glyphosate was recently found to be probable carcinogen by the World Health Organization. They issued their findings just fairly recently. So the legal environment has changed in regards to liability, potential liability to people or governmental entities that apply it after it was found to be carcinogenic. It's similar to how the laws changed about smoking once it became obvious that it was a public health issue. And the city of Ojai may be legally liable if they continue to do something negligently after they, have shown that it's probably a carcinogen. It's something you maybe should think about and make an assessment on whether you'd be exposing yourself to liability. I'd rather have weeds than a carcinogen. I've never been anxious about weeds, but it's reasonable to assume that some normal person would have a certain amount of anxiety and emotional distress about being exposed against their will to a probable carcinogen, even if they didn't have any identifiable health problems, that they could be directly tied to this stuff. Just the fact that they didn't know about it and it was something that was on their mind could be an actionable cause, because of the emotional stress brought about by not knowing whether they or their children have been exposed to this carcinogen. So look into it and check on it and see, because things change and you have to keep up with the changing legal landscape. Thanks.
Thank you. Deborah?
Thank you, Mayor, Laura, council members. After that flow presentation, I'm hesitant to even come up here. I'd like to frame this, which I wasn't going to do before, but I represent the Ojai Valley Green Coalition, Deborah Pendry, 309 Riverside Road, and we're a grassroots organization. We can't really speak to the economics, the posturing, the policies, the politics, really. All I know is that we need to have water in 20 to 50 years for our children and our community, for the basic needs, and live in prosperity with that water. So with that in mind, and being somewhat naive and wearing blinders possibly with this, I'd like to share that Water Awareness Month in California began during the 1987 to 1992 drought and was developed by the State Department of Water Resources and the Association of California Water Agencies to educate the public on the importance of efficient water use and conservation habits. During the month of May, we are asked to reevaluate our water conservation efforts to ensure we are focused on preserving our most precious resource, water. With 2015 declared as the fourth year of drought, it is more important than ever that we do everything we can to help sustain a long-lasting water supply. As was already mentioned last month, the statewide requirement to reduce urban potable water consumption by 25% was announced. To this end, the Green Coalition would like to point out some resources and give some reminders. First, the water energy nexus is huge. Power needs water, water needs power. As I've shared in the past, and according to the California Energy Commission, 19% of California electricity goes toward water-related uses, and 28% of that 19% is household residential use, so that's the biggest cut of that 19% pie. Another interesting graph shows water use by power plants, looking at the water consumed to produce 1 megawatt hour of electricity, which is enough to power 1,000 homes for an hour. Wind energy, 0 gallons. Solar thermal with dry cooling technology, 26 gallons. Solar photovoltaic, like we put on our rooftops, 26 gallons. Natural gas, 198 gallons. Nuclear energy, 672 gallons. Coal, 687 gallons. Solar thermal with wet cooling technology, 786 gallons. So what can we do locally besides putting solar electricity on our rooftops through the Coalition Solarize program? The gas company offers customers no-cost starter kit that includes faucet aerators and shower head aerator. And so folks know aerators work by allowing air to enter into the water stream, maintaining a high pressure flow while reducing the water usage. They also offer rebates for water heaters, tankless water heaters, washing machines, and low flow shower heads. And they also have several rebates specifically related to energy reduction, as does the Southern California Edison. The Coalition has created a local Water Matters resource page on our website, ohiValleyGreenCoalition.org. There's lots of great links, websites, gray water information. In closing, we know what is happening here in the Ojai Valley, much less the world, and all the changes to be made and the work to be done can feel so overwhelming when we're trying to pay a mortgage, keep our kids safe. Still, we can't let life, our life, be a spectator sport. We just don't have the luxury. Teddy Roosevelt said, "Do what you can with what you have where you are." If at the end of the day we've done that, we can't ask more of ourselves, and it's a good day, especially if we're all doing what we can with what we have where we are at. Because as individuals, we make a difference, but as a community, we make an impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty?
Good evening. I'm Patty Pagling with Transition to Organics. I live at 3316 Matilaha Canyon Road in Ojai. I just wanted to say thank you, Deborah. You always inspire me. Thank you. I'm here to talk about the Ojai Valley Trail, and I want to let you know that we met with Supervisor Steve Bennett last week and had a really good outcome with that meeting. He's willing to move forward with us to make it possible for Ventura County to be one of the leaders in implementing sustainable practices and methods in weed management, beginning with the Ojai Valley Trail. And I know that part of the Ojai Valley Trail is under city jurisdiction. And I know that Greg Grant has said that he is going to be testing, or has tested, I have to check in with him about that. He was going to be testing the horticultural vinegar instead of using the glyphosate products. Supervisor Bennett actually agreed to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in opposing any more broadcast spraying of glyphosate products on the Ojai Valley, starting with the Ojai Valley Trail. And he also agreed to facilitate a meeting with Connor Jones, who is here tonight, to speak about weeds and their significance in showing us what's going on with the soil. He's going to have a meeting set up between the Ventura County staff and Connor Jones to educate them so that we can come up with the best plan possible to manage the Ojai Valley Trail without using toxic herbicides. So along with that, this Saturday, I'm going to be out at the Y, across from the Y at the Rotary Park near the Ojai Valley Trail. And I'm asking people in the community to come and join me to look at what's going on with the trail. And basically the puncture vine is what the Ventura County Parks Department is saying that they need to target. Although Supervisor Bennett, said he would stand with us to stop any broadcast spray. He said that because it's already in the works to have a spot spraying of the puncture vine, because it's those little really sharp goat heads that are on the trail that might puncture a bike tire or hurt somebody's, a dog's paw. Anyway, I'm going to be there, and I would love to have a lot of the community join us to look around, see if we can collect the puncture vine. And there's this wonderful weed tea that you can make that has been shown to be very successful by a lot of farmers, experienced farmers and gardeners. You make a weed tea, and then you pour it over the area where the soil is actually needing the nutrients that the weeds are trying to provide. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. I know we're not going to talk about items, but it was interesting because we're part of the Ojai Trail, and it would be great to see if we could possibly work with Mr. Bennett and coordinated that. And it sounds like Mr. Grant's already involved, so I just would like to follow up with that. Sue Williamson.
Hi, I'm Sue Williamson. I live in Taramina, and I just wanted to continue this theme about the glyphosate. I think we can learn from history. Most of us are familiar with the story of DDT and the ad tagline, "DDT is good for me," from the 40s and the 50s. Now, we all know this isn't true. In 2012, Dr. Don Huber, Emeritus Professor of Plant Pathology at Purdue University, came out with a statement that glyphosate is worse than DDT. In 2012, Dr. May Wan Ho, world-renowned geneticist and biophysicist, director of the Institute of Science and Society, also came out to call for a worldwide ban on glyphosate. Every year, more studies have been coming out about the toxicity of glyphosate, and we've been presenting this information to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors for several years, and finally, there seems to be a realization and an opening for this shift in willingness to stop the use of these products. In our meeting with Supervisor Bennett, he told us that because now the World Health Organization has come out with a study calling glyphosate, classifying it as a probable carcinogenic in humans, it's finally given him the scientific backing to really get the staff in line to work with us and to provide alternatives. So this is a great breakthrough, and we understand that the city is still using a little glyphosate, trying not to use too much, but is still using some. And so what we would like to ask is that the city enact a resolution to discourage the use and sale of glyphosate in the community. So maybe this could be put on as a topic of discussion at some point. We would appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
William Ulrich.
Good evening. William Ulrich, 487 Gridley Road. In light of my name appearing in comments before this council at the last meeting, as well as in the Ojai Valley News, I wish to address the context and pattern of distraction, deflection, and disinformation presented to you by a member of this council, as well as a planning commissioner, regarding open email communications that were generated by myself and the BAB chair, Mr. Daddy, when we were acting as private citizens, and which were added to the council agenda, apparently by Mr. Clark, beneath his letterhead. I say distraction because, as you know, the emails were sent to you directly, as council members, openly and publicly. As a matter of fact, Mr. Daddy, in copying the city manager, Mr. Clark, rendered his emails public record. I say deflection, since the emoting and concomitant drama detracted from the issue, specifically the issue being the lack of transparency produced by the non-public meetings, i.e. the pre-meetings conducted between members of the Planning Commission and city staff. Relative to disinformation, and given the public record nature of both my comments here in past sessions, as well as before the Planning Commission, it is disingenuous of both the councilwoman and her apparent protege, the planning commissioner, to assert that any of this was secret, quote unquote. Please note that in response to comments by Councilwoman Clapp, who, quote, would not have approved the Building Appeals Board review of anything pertaining to Title 10 or planning or zoning, unquote. By way of response, please further note that the Building Appeals Board, as authorized and mandated by the state of California, is not only a building appeals board, but a housing appeals board. This includes Title 10 purview. Finally, and in order to follow the direction of this council, the Building Appeals Board needed to see, in a consolidated context and form, our recommendations as produced by staff, just to make sure that it wound up reflecting our work. What is surprising to me is that each of you know these underlying facts, and not one of you made comments in support of those facts, in the face of all of the disruptive drama being generated by the councilwoman and the planning commissioner. I remain disappointed in the dysfunction inherent in the governance of this community. It requires repair. Thank you.
Thank you. Connor Jones.
Thanks. I'm Connor Jones of Ojai Permaculture and the East End Eden Permaculture Demonstration Site Farm on the East End. And I'm here to speak to a little bit more about what was mentioned with the glyphosate and the management of the trail. I am one for presenting long-term solutions, and the management technique up until this point has been a short-term solution to annually eradicate puncture vine and all the other annual disturbance weeds that show up on either side of the trail. With the puncture vine in particular, it is responding to the soil condition, which is compaction, which is why it's very hard to pull out. It's got a very deep taproot, and why it also deters animals and people from walking on that section of the bike path or on the sides. And it's also very low growing, which evades weed whackers. It's not easy to get with any other conventional management other than herbicide at this point, which also doesn't work, and we're starting to concentrate a potential carcinogen on either side of the bike path. So what I'm proposing is to use the information that this plant is providing, which is the soil needs to be decompacted and it needs to be covered, which is why it grows low. It tries to shade the soil. And we need to essentially replace these weeds in what they're trying to do. And the simplest way to do that is to add mulch, and about 3 inches of mulch as a coverage. And so that's about like 1 yard of mulch will do 100 square feet. We might need to do more initially with that, but this is what I'm going to be talking to Supervisor Steve Bennett about. And over time, you actually create the conditions to where those weeds are not able to germinate and thrive. And that lays to rest this persistent issue and something that has to be budgeted for every year. The application of herbicide, whether toxic or non-toxic, is still a cost. And if we could get rid of the problem by addressing it directly instead of treating symptoms, then I think that would be a long-term solution.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's all the speakers cards I have for public communication. Anybody else wanting to speak? See no more hands. I'm going to move down to the consent calendar. I am pulling item 1E, but before that, anybody else have any items they wish to pull? If not, then I'll...
1E?
1E,
Yeah.
yes.
I'd just like to mention, Mayor, that there's a substitute resolution that Rhonda passed out for item D.
Oh, yes. 1D. With that, I'll entertain a motion if there's...
Motion to approve the consent calendar absent item E.
Second.
Roll call.
Wyrick?
Aye.
Haney?
Yes.
Blatz?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes. I pulled 1E because Jenny, if you wish to say a couple words. And this item has to do with appointment to the Area Agency on Aging Board of Commissioners.
Yes. Good evening, Council. I came tonight so that you could actually see my face. I'm your Ojai representative to the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging. And Mr. Wyrick, Mr. Haney, and Mayor Lara, I speak for you. I also speak for the seniors in Ojai Valley. My qualifications there are, I am a senior, have been for many years. I have a master's in social work with a focus on gerontology, and I've lived in Ojai for 15 years. So I bring the concerns that Ojai seniors have to the the Agency on Aging Advisory Council, who meets tomorrow, by the way, and I also bring any innovations and progress that we're making to make the lives of seniors in Ventura County better all the time back to the Ojai Council. So I'll come and see you again sometime when I have something good to tell you. Thank you.
Great, looking forward to it. Any questions for Jenny? No, with that, I'll entertain a motion to appoint her to the Area Agency on Aging Board of Commissioners.
Oh, I move the appointment of Jenny Rockefeller as the city's representative to the Area Agency on Aging Board of Commissioners for the 2-year term expiring June 30th, 2016.
And I'll second it.
Roll call.
Wyrick?
Aye.
Haney?
Yes.
Blatz?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes. I am, yes, congratulations, thank you. Now we're going to be moving to our discussion item. The first discussion is going to be on leaf blower regulations, and I am going to recuse myself due to the fact that I have a landscape business where I do maintenance. And Mayor Pro Tem Blas will take over this item.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Lara. Welcome everyone that's in the audience tonight to address the council with regard to this item. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. The leaf blower regulations were discussed at great length last year, and as part of that, we went through a number of demonstrations on how various types of leaf blowers work. The outcome of that was that the council asked the city attorney to put together an ordinance that would ban leaf blowers, and we set a public hearing on that ban. And based on the public input, both prior to and at the public hearing, the city council decided not to move forward with that ban, but instead directed staff to make more efforts to enforce the regulations that we have on the books right now. And basically right now, we allow electric leaf blowers, but not gas leaf blowers in residential zones and within 150 feet of residential zones, Monday through Saturday, but not on Sunday or holidays. And we allow gas blowers in other zones that are not within 150 feet of residential zones. The council asked that that be brought forward for further discussion. So you're not really in a position to amend the ordinance at this time because this is not a public hearing, but you can give us direction if you'd like to amend the ordinance in one way or another. And Mr. Grant is available to respond to questions about some of the proposals that he had to address various issues relating to leaf blowers.
Okay. Just for the record, do we have any Spanish-speaking interpreter here this evening?
Not this evening. Mayor Laura has volunteered to translate if we need him.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Clark by the council? Or Mr. Grant? Anything? No?
Well, I think we're going to hear from the public, aren't we?
Yeah.
And then,
Okay. This is a discussion item, so members of the public are welcome to speak to the council with regard to this. I have one, no, actually, I don't have any speakers cards on the subject.
I haven't received any.
Okay. Is anyone in the public wanting to speak to us about it? No? Anybody? Don't be bashful.
it's your time.
No? All right. All right.
¿Dónde está Severo? Severo.
Hey, Mr.
Yeah, maybe the mayor can come and be a translator for us.
Mr. Mayor.
Can you interpret for us, please?
Ya, antes Martín Ortiz Flores. Sí, nada más quería preguntarle, ¿verdad? Que, o sea, que para esto, o sea, necesitamos que vengan todos, ¿verdad? Para irnos a votación, o sea.
He was requesting that if you could put this on the, ¿quiere otro?
Para la próxima junta, ¿verdad?
He was asking if he could, this type of discussion items, he wanted a group of them to be present and
Porque primero pues no recibimos notas, ¿verdad? Para venir todos.
because they weren't advised or told about this issue.
O sea, nomás o sea, pues, o sea, porque sí siguen dando bueno, no son tickets, pues son advertencias, ¿verdad?
Because you keep citing citations for the use of blowers, right?
Sí, yo he recibido advertencias nomás por usar el eléctrico también. O sea, no sé, pues, qué vamos a parar, ¿verdad? O sea, porque, o sea, me han dado advertencias con el soplador eléctrico.
Oh, because he's aware that he's been giving warnings about using electric blowers.
En la calle Aliso.
And street on the Liso.
Entonces, para que le piensen que vamos a votar o qué vamos a hacer, ¿verdad? Porque los sopladores eléctricos también están quejándose por el ruido.
Because he's concerned that electric blowers are going to be banned, and he's not sure what the decision today is going to be about.
Eso es todo. Gracias.
And that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can ask a follow-up question.
Le quieren preguntar una pregunta.
Currently, the ordinance allows electric blowers. So I'd like to ask him, are we issuing warnings on electric blowers?
Dice que ahorita la ley dice que puede uno usar sopladores eléctricos.
Pues yo para ese día por lo mismo, para no tener problemas, ¿ah? Porque pues ya dijo que el ruido estaba muy fuerte.
He said that he chose not to use it that day because he thought the noise was too high not using electrical blowers.
Okay, thank you.
Y en Ventura yo estoy usando uno de pilas y casi después de baterías y casi lo mismo el sonido del eléctrico.
In Ventura, he's using a battery-operated blower, and he says that the noise decimals is the same as electric blower.
O sea, no sé qué va a pasar, güey.
He's just wondering what the decision is going to be about today.
Okay.
Sí, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Thank you. Anybody else wanting to come forward? No? All right, then I'll bring it back to council for any questions of staff or comments.
I think Mr. Summer had a comment.
Yeah, Mr. Summer?
I just wanted to note for the record that Mayor Lara's participation was solely as a translator.
Mhm.
As you'll note from the conversation, he did not make any comment on his own feelings on the matter.
Yeah. And also the record can reflect that myself acting as mayor requested that he act as a translator. All right, comments?
Well, I think the public needs to be reassured that no action is being taken tonight at all. This is a discussion item. And so, just everyone to be clear, and then I can be corrected if my perception is that basically we are enforcing the ordinance that's been on the books since 1997 with no changes. It's my understanding.
That's correct.
And so the issue becomes some complaints we've had that this is not a wise way to proceed because there's a general feeling of people not being in compliance is one issue that's been brought before us. And I believe the last time this came, the prohibition version came for consideration. It was a 2-2 deadlock, and therefore we continued the way we are. I just wanted to get those facts out to the public in case there's any confusion, to assure everyone nothing's changing tonight.
Right.
Councilman Wyrick,
Yeah,
can I
go
interject
ahead.
something at that point too? Also, I think it was stated at that time too that once we had a code enforcement officer, that we were to bring this discussion back to the council and have it then.
Right, and I actually do remember that as well, even though neither of us were on the council, we were just watching the council at the time. And there was a sense that it would be appropriate to get a compliance officer on board, start enforcing, see what happens, look at the feedback, look at the experience, and go from there.
Right.
And so I think that's where we're at in terms of not necessarily looking at any particular change to the ordinance, but just reviewing the entire situation. It's certainly not necessarily taking up as our only option what was proposed back in the previous council, that deadlock 2-2 on the total prohibition. I don't think that's by any means the only option we're looking at.
Right. Councilman Haney, do you have anything else to add?
Well, also, I just wanted to add that we're here to discuss, again, about the imbalance that we have in the community, about the fact that we wrote an ordinance or created an ordinance that the one we couldn't enforce at the time and hadn't for a long period of time. And now that it's being enforced, is subjecting a large group of citizens in Ojai to fines or to the feeling that they're going to be fined. And I don't think that's what we want in this community. We want a community that works together. So part of what I want to talk to tonight is maybe looking at some of the recommendations that Greg Grant brought forward in the past meeting. And if Mr. Grant's here, maybe he could come up and talk to that. And then two, some additional information that we might want to add to modifying or changing the ordinance in the future. So I'll start with the fact that I would like to personally see that anyone using a blower in the city of Ojai, no matter what type it is, whether it's electric, whether it's gas, whether it's battery, be required to have a business license and to have their equipment inspected on a yearly or a biannually basis. And that to me is the most important thing. And then two, through that process, we can look at the age of the majority of the equipment that's being used, and we can figure out how to modify that equipment or how to help these users of this equipment use it better. So that's part of what I'd like to talk to.
All right, well, having been the only council member on the council at the time this came before us the last time, Mr. Grant had provided us with an excellent demonstration of various types of blowers, and one of the things that became very apparent because we had a sound meter was that the newer gas blowers were actually quieter than the electric blowers. Right. And if we're concerned about sound, then our current ordinance is not the proper ordinance to have, if that's what we're worried about. The other thing that we tossed around that night was the same thing that Councilman Haney just said, was to have a business license as well as having a sticker on your blower saying it conformed to whatever we came up with. And I think that as long as we allow people to know what the rules are, they're going to follow it. Right now, it's so difficult for what I consider to be of the vast majority of the users of the blowers being a minority group of our community, and it improperly affects them. And it improperly affects them in a way in which they're making their living. And I really don't think that's a fair way that it should be looked at or enforced. So with that, I would really like this to come back to the council in the form of a public hearing in which we can investigate all the options that were talked about the last time. Somehow we got derailed the last time when the council decided that instead of looking at the options to make our ordinance better, they wanted to outlaw blowers altogether. And I don't think that's the direction at least this councilman wants to go. And then when it came back and that was defeated, and I made a motion to go back and reinvestigate it at that time, my motion was defeated. So I think it's time that we have some new people on the council to look at this again, and I'd be all for bringing it back. And at the time we bring it back, there'll be plenty of forewarning, because there was tremendous participation the last time this came before us, and we would hope to have as much, if not more, participation by the people that are really affected by this ordinance the next time.
Yeah, I would just like to concur with that, Mayor Pro Tem, because as you very succinctly put it, if we're talking about the noise, which is what the basis of the regulation is that we have now, we're kind of losing rational basis for how we're doing it by saying just gas, when in fact the newer models may be quieter than, say, an older model of electric. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an appropriate way to go. And I think the other thing I want to really echo and concur with is that has to be, whatever we do, should be twinned with what Councilman Haney's talking about in terms of business license requirement, inspection stickers. And I would also say consider requiring as part of that, if it's possible to do this in our regulations, that if you're working for someone else and doing landscape work, you have a sign on your truck which shows the business license on that sign. Perhaps a contact phone number. I mean, that's for legal to decide what we can and cannot do. So I think the key is to have the rational basis and then to do what we can to make it the enforceability reasonable and tractable. And if we do that, I think we'll advance and move away from having a compliance officer deal with things that maybe aren't a priority.
And the last thing I want to add to it is, legally, we can't work in the city of Ojai on Saturdays. So, and I know that might subject a lot of the maintenance companies to some hardship, but I wouldn't have a problem in the city of Ojai it being quiet on a Saturday morning as well as Sunday morning. So it's something to think about, and that should be part of the discussion, is if we're going to change this, how we're going to change it, and how we can find that balance into what the community needs and how the community works.
Okay. Is Mr. Grant out there? Okay. Does the council have any questions for Mr. Grant, or do you think we got it pretty well covered? You have anything you want to add?
I have a question.
You have a question? Okay.
Okay. My name is Daniel Casada. I live in Cherry Lane, and I agree with that with Haney about the license. But I've been paying license since '89, and now I can work because I'm not allowed to use the blower. So how that works?
Well, that's what we're working on.
I mean, how that works? I mean, all my clients been asking, okay, clean my yard, but how can I clean the yard when I can't use the blowers? And then, according to what I saw in the previous biddings, that was only like 10 people who was complaining about the blowers. And then we have here like 100 people. We collect the signature from a lot of people. And then it seems like the council member didn't count that. So that's confused myself, because I mean, we're working hard to collect all the signatures from people who has like to use the blowers. And then we come here and where are the signatures? Nobody knows. Yeah. So we say, yeah, somebody got to have the signatures here, because they're asking for that. And then Mr. Paul know about what I'm talking about, because he was the only one who was here. And then so we say, okay, finally they come up with the signatures. Somebody was, I don't know, I'm saying was hiding, but not present to the other members. And then so my thought was, well, if it's only few people was against the blowers, and majority of the city people want to use the blowers, how come don't consider that? I mean, that's only my question.
Sure.
And I apologize because my language is not that good,
Yeah.
but.
Let me try to respond. I was as confused as you were that night when the council shifted gears. So I really can appreciate how frustrating it must sound, having come to the meeting as prepared as your group was, and then having the council turn it around and vote to bring it back as a total ban.
That's right.
But in order to work within the city, you're supposed to have a business license regardless of whether you have a blower.
I agree with that.
And we still have, on the books, electric blowers are okay. So, I mean, if you can work within that constraint, we're going to do our best to put something together, hopefully, that is going to make a lot more sense for the people that are citizens, as well as you guys that are out there every day, you know, in the trenches doing what you do. So all I can tell you is keep posted, and we're going to try to put something together for you that makes sense. And I, for one, hear you.
Well, like I say, everybody knows electric blowers is kind of dangerous because we drag the cords all over the place.
I know.
The tangle up in plants, the Haney knows what I'm talking about, or probably everybody who works on the other yard knows. Some plants have a thorn, so can punch the cords, and then by the time we know it, we could just.
Yeah. And I think the electric blowers include battery-operated blowers, but
So
I don't think the batteries last
I don't know
very
about electric blowers. I tried to buy electric blowers, and they got back up because people tried to buy and we can get it the next day.
Yeah.
So for the time being, my thinking is what are we going to do till you come to the next meeting?
Well, it won't be the next meeting probably. It'll probably be 2 or 3 meetings from now, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But
we'll have to
we will
kinda
get
look
it
at the
back here as
agenda.
quickly as we
We're going to send
can.
notice to everybody to
Yeah,
next meeting?
keep watching you can look on the website and you'll see when it's going to come forward.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you very much for being here. Greg?
Good evening. I was just going to mention that the Public Works Department luckily had a lot of really old blowers that we were using. So we felt it was about time to go ahead and switch to the low noise blowers as part of a result of the meeting last year, I guess it was now. So, and it's just surprising because the crew seems to think, hey, you know, we don't need to use the low noise blowers in our own yard, in the Public Works yard, to clean that out. So they use the old blowers. They were, but whenever I'm trying to work, that blower comes on, it kind of bothers the heck out of me, and I tell the crew, quit using the old blowers, it's time to get rid of them, right? So, but it's pretty amazing, those low noise blowers really are effective. They sound, I think you remember the demonstration out here, it's pretty impressive. It sounds like they're on a kind of a loud idle. And you know, everybody, when we were doing the test, everybody said full throttle, crank it up, but they were already at full throttle.
Yeah.
So they're pretty impressive how quiet they are. It really is it's annoying to hear the old style ones when you get used to the new quiet ones. So I just want to mention that.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, Mr. Grant. I would think some of the old blowers for constant use pretty much mandate the use of ear protection to be safe.
Exactly.
In terms of OSHA requirements.
Very loud.
Are the newer ones on the lower, do they fall below that threshold?
I'm not certain, but I know that most people wouldn't tend to wear them. It's at
Not the-
65
not the same
decibels.
danger at all to
Yeah,
the
it's
hearing.
65 decibels at 50 foot, you know, is
Yeah.
where it's rated. So
Is an issue there of the health of the operator.
for a person in occupation, I think it's best to wear the ear protection anyways. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions by the council? No? Okay. I think you've got enough direction, don't you?
I do, yes.
All right. Then we can ask Mayor Lara to come back.
book would be great, right?
Sorry. Yes, sorry.
Okay. Item number 3, city council goals. I'm going to turn it over for staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. As you know, Mayor Lara initiated a goal-setting process at the first meeting in his term, and we've had a number of different discussions about that. At the most recent discussion, we presented a list of the various goals that the council had brought up during the discussion, and the council asked that each member rate those goals between those things that are a very high priority to do between now and the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, those that are a high priority to do during the first 6 months of the next fiscal year, and those that are a lower priority. And so we did that tabulation, and we are returning the results to you. And I would mention that since the time that we circulated that, of course, new ideas have come up. So there's a number of things that are unrated. So we're really looking for direction from the City Council as to what your priorities are within those timeframes.
I also want to say that I provided some documents. I provided myself, I went over just food for thought policy questions while looking at prioritizing goal setting. I also provided a list of council meeting dates so that we are all aware about the meetings that we have to try to tackle some of these issues, to start thinking about where we want our limited staff to place some of these items. And then I also, I added to this list, on one of the attachments that you guys received, there's, on the heading, there's priority issues, items, date certain commissions, departments, whether they're completed, and in community participation group. I do want to say that I added the commissions so that we're aware of some of the issues or priorities that we have and where they could possibly go. And as you can see, most of our priorities are either they go to the Planning Commission, some of them go to the Buildings Appeals Board and the Planning Commissions, and then under departments, most of them fall under the Community Development Department. So we're putting a high level of issues on those departments, and I just thought that should be an awareness for us to keep in mind. I also on the latter end of this table, I put community participation and groups, because we do have some community groups that want to participate, and I think it's important for us to keep that in mind, because we are the ones that give direction to our staff, to our city manager, and with that, we could obviously advocate for a certain group to help out with these issues, especially when we're so limited in staff. And I just thought that I'd provide that. I do want to pull up on the screen so that the public could see and at home see if what I'm talking about. If we could pull up the priority and issues. It's just a sheet just showing you what I kind of did. And mind you, this is very rough. And so if you guys have suggestions on improving these graphs and tables, et cetera, I'm more than happy to modify them. And like I said, it's the one, the priority, it's the Excel. It's Excel sheet, yes, perfect, right there. And just so that the public could see, it runs down, and I think there's about 57 items on here, and some of those items are completed, so that we could decide what we really want. I know we did tally up some of the priorities, so that it would seem like we'd start from there, but any input from the council would be much appreciated.
Well, I'll start.
Councilmember Haney.
Yeah,
I know it's a lot of information.
yeah. Well, it seemed like from what was in our package to what this is I think what I would start with, I'd just go through this in a line item and let's just cross off everything that's been accomplished.
And then
That's going to help. That's going to help us.
perfect.
determine-
And then there is a little tablet on the bottom. If you could go to the third tablet, on the bottom part of the worksheet, it says work without completion. That's a total, that's the priorities. It lists the priorities and then it lists the ones that have been completed. It doesn't actually show up there. So I don't know if that helps or not.
Just as a process question, what's going to be the opportunity for public to speak to this?
Just if they have any input, I think I asked to make some of the copies of these. I don't know if we made copies for the public. And I know that on the staff report, there's also, it tallies and it gives you the high priorities to complete by June 30th. So if they see an item on there where they would like to speak to or the.
I was just thinking maybe before we start a line item, maybe we see if the public has anything to say about anything.
Okay, great. Fine with me.
Well, any questions for staff, just to begin with? No? I do have a speaker's card. Don Teating.
Good evening. Dawn Teating, North Signal Street. Thank you for hearing our concerns regarding the protection of Ojai's cultural resources, the archaeological sites, and traditional cultural places. We appreciate your support in protecting the city's heritage and the heritage of the local Chumash. On April 21st, we had a very productive meeting with the interim city attorney, Mr. Scott Howard, and we look forward to working with city staff moving forward. Regarding City Council goals related to archaeological resources listed on page 3-6, the tabulation sheet of potential priorities, there appears to be a mathematical error in the ranking of item number 9E. The stated item that reads medium-term set standards for discretionary projects and ministerial projects where there is a documented site on the parcel is assigned as 7. However, the tally marks total 9. This effectively moves this item to the list of high priority goals to be completed by June 30th. In addition to addressing this change, we would appreciate your attention to the implementation of AB 52 that requires tribal consultation in the environmental review process. This new law becomes effective July 1st. Please consider adding this goal to the list of high priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is correct. That is, again, item 9E is 9.
So that moves it up.
That definitely.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the public on any of these priority lists, the list of priorities? No? Just one more comment.
Thank you. I'm not sure if the last comment got picked up. AB 52, Assembly Bill 52 becomes effective July 1st. It requires the city, the lead agency, to consult with tribal members during the environmental review process. I'm not sure where the city is in implementing that new law.
Okay.
But it does, the guidelines will come out in 2016, but the law is effective July 1st of this year.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, Councilmember Wyrick.
I know the Native American Commission, I mean the Native Commission, the California Native Commission, is taking a lead, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, in putting out guidelines for this or recommended guidelines for implementation.
The Office of Planning and Research, the state agencies, the governor's office has actually, about 2 weeks ago, released draft guidelines that are available for public comment.
Okay, so we do
which
have.
is due June 1st. There are draft guidelines that have been put out by the state.
I was just a little concerned when you said 2016. If it's implemented this year, I was hoping some draft guidelines would be out
The governor's office does have those. There is a meeting on June 18th. There's a series of meetings that the Native American Heritage Commission is sponsoring.
Sorry if I misstated the name.
No, that's correct. Native American Heritage Commission has a series. There's 3 meetings that are being offered regarding AB 52 implementation. The nearest one to Ojai is on June 18th at in Santa Ynez. I believe it's at the Chumash Santa Ynez Reservation.
Are any of these going to be in webinar format, do you know? Or?
I do not know. We were, Julie Tumpamayat, the commissioner for the Native American Heritage Commission here in Ojai, had considered trying to get a live link down here in Ojai, but I don't know where she is on that.
Yeah, if we could have council updated as to if that becomes available.
Sure.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Or the public in general. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I remember I said this probably a month or if not 2 months ago when this started coming up on a regular basis was how we could start a new commission, and then that was shot down. And I understand that and I respect that, but it sure seems like we have existing commissions that we could combine and create an opportunity for archaeological, historical resources to be a part of one. And that would be my recommendation down the road, is that how we make this whole thing inclusive into one existing commission so that we are ahead of the game on AB 52? And instead of dragging our feet, we enact something to start moving forward. That would be my goal.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hi, Julie.
No, Julie
Thank you.
Well, I can consider Julie Tumamayat, Miners Oaks. Good evening. We can do a live call-in. It's not a webinar, but it's a conference call.
Right.
And if there's enough people interested in attending, the Ojai Land Conservancy has already hosted one. We just need to give proper, I think it's 10-day notice prior to the meeting. So I would do that if I have enough. I'd rather be there in person, but if I know that there's enough people interested in wanting to attend and listen in and comment in, then I'll go ahead and do that if you want me to. So they can give me a couple days and let me know, and I'll go ahead and set that up.
I think you may have the interest.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just
well,
speaking
it's
as
going
one
to
person.
be, it is something that is long overdue.
Yes.
And for the protection of our cultural resources. And, we cover a large territory here as Native Chumash peoples. And so there's as the only tribal band here, even though we aren't federally recognized, we do have the state recognition. And we are the only ones in Ventura County. So we're dealing with Agora, Carpinteria, Ventura, Oxnard, Camarillo, Santa Paula. We're going to be really, really busy with this AB 52 and all the councils in Ventura County in general. So the more we practice and get this going, it'll hopefully be it is an important step. So, but yeah, we need to do a lot of homework still on it and learn about it and how this is all going to work.
When you say if it generates enough interest, how many?
Well, more than 5 people, please.
More than 5 people.
It's like, yeah, I mean, and the public's invited to these meetings also. So, the last time I was there by myself, and it was posted on on the Ojai Land Conservancy website as well as on their door. So that's how we have to do it. We have to post it on their website. We have to take a picture of a notice on their door, and it's on the Native American Heritage website as well. So that people, when they want to go on their website, they'll see it. So,
right.
Yeah.
I don't see any issue with us, with the city, helping with the publicity for that. Is there?
Sure, yeah.
And it could be on our website.
And, and I think it's important for the community to be involved in this because that's who we're dealing with. That's their properties. This is something that's been in law since the 70s when cultural resources became a mitigatable issue. And before that, there was no concerns at all about the cultural resources and the artifacts and burials. So, and still people are denying the process and not working with the process. So and as homeowners and people who live in places that we know are sensitive, they're still at a loss at what to do. They're still, it's really vague for them when they, especially new people moving into the valley with real estate people not disclosing. And then they're surprised and they're shocked. And then they get ministerial or categorical exemptions from staff, and that sets off a whole nother alarm system. We want to start this at the very beginning. It's really important to let everybody know the process that's been in place and been in your general plans for a couple decades now. So, it's we got to bring all this into working form. And like I said, again, we're here to help, we're here to support and work with you on that. We look forward to all that.
What was the date of that?
June 18th.
June 18th.
June 18th?
Mm-hmm.
So alls I would, I'm just going to raise my hand quickly and say, if we don't have enough participation in the community.
Oh, we'll still do it. I mean.
Well, I'm just saying that, and being present at that meeting, I will volunteer to go with you. Because I think it's important
Thank
that
you.
someone from the city council understands it or starts to grasp it and becomes a part of it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. All
I
right.
think more importantly, it would be also our staff be important if we can have a webinar to participate. And so that anything else, Julie? Or any questions for Julie? No?
Right.
Great.
We can put it on the city website.
Yeah.
That'd be good. Thank you, Linda. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
good
that'd be
suggestion.
All right. okay.
Great. Thank
I'll get back to you. All right. Thank you very much.
So that, obviously, that 9E shoots it up to June 30th on the first page, where there's already one, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So there's 20 items that have to be done by June 30th. And some are ongoing, like code enforcement and the website, the
Could I just say, in the staff report, I did indicate that some of these items, even though they were ranked high to be completed by June 30th, we just can't do it.
Yeah.
So those include the vacation rental process, which is ongoing, the vacant building process, which we are working on, but still will take a little bit of time to do, the police services contract, which is dependent upon when the sheriff brings that forward, the building services RFP, which is going to take 6 months to do once we start it. So we are going to be able to complete a lot of these by June 30th, but not all of them.
But not all of them. Could you give us that list exactly which ones you'll be able to complete? I know some of them are already completed, but just so that it's not confusing on the high priority on page 3-3 on attachment A.
So starting at the top of 3.3,
Yeah.
the vacation rentals is one that we will not complete. The vacant buildings, which is right below that, is one that we will not complete. The police services contract, which is right below that. The building services RFP, which is at the top of the next group. The information handouts for planning. The historic preservation ordinance, which is fairly far along, but won't be complete. And then the others we think we will be able to complete.
Okay, and then also with that, that's also going to be the 9E from the archaeology resources, the medium term. Is
We'll have
that,
to
will that be able to be completed, or?
I think that Matt's correct, that we should have public participation as part of that. It may be that we can do an interim policy, an administrative policy, just to make sure we're in compliance with AB 52 and document that we are in compliance. but then we would still want to have another step beyond that that provides more public input. So,
So it might be a two-phase.
so yeah, so a lot of these things, even though we're saying we're not going to get them complete by June 30th, we're going to make significant progress.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just add to the point on the cultural resources protection item that we've now moved up the priority list, doing the math correctly. Part of what I think it makes sense to not try to rush that to be done by June 30th is that we want to build in time to both see how the guidelines get put in place by the OPR, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. And unfortunately, Councilmember Wyrick, they are expecting to have their guidelines finalized sometime in 2016 for a mandate that takes effect in 2 months. Why they did it that way, who knows? But in any case, I think it makes sense to kind of get a sense of where the guidelines are going before we make our final ordinance, and also thinking about the difference between ministerial versus discretionary projects. AB 52 applies only under its own terms to discretionary projects that are not exempt from CEQA review, which you'll recall is a subset of discretionary projects, including, as some discretionary projects are exempt from review. The item is listed on the priorities chart is to look at both ministerial and discretionary projects, and that's another aspect where we'd be going above and beyond AB 52, which reflects this community's values in ensuring cultural resources preservation. And to accomplish that defensibly, sensibly, and reasonably, we would need some additional time to work through the Planning Commission, and I would think the Historic Preservation Commission. And so that's why I don't think that'd be able to get done by June 30th.
Okay. Yeah, Councilmember Wyrick?
I think the issue there is how do we do things in a proper, stepwise, and reasonable fashion, but at the same time, don't violate the spirit of AB 52 in terms of allowing perhaps some destruction of cultural resources that we wouldn't have avoided if we had finalized the process. So I think the trick there is to find a way to be cautious with our approvals while we're going through the final steps of coming up with what the guidelines should be. And I think that's going to be our difficulty. I think that's where we may need some interim work in making sure that we abide by the spirit while we're working on the final stipulations.
Agreed. And I think the way we'll do that is through putting together an administrative policy regarding AB 52 compliance in the interim.
And it has been brought up to our attention, and it keeps being brought up that we do, in a general plan, we do have policies in there. So it's important to include those, I guess, while being cautious in our process. I think that'd be the smart move. Any more input?
Well,
Agreed.
Yeah, on the same lines, I also think having a stronger relationship with the Chumash Indians, with Julia especially, and involving her, not necessarily in our decision-making process, but involving her in an open discussion regarding her concerns and the people that she represents. So we just have to be open to that and create an environment that's conducive for that interaction.
Wholeheartedly agreed.
Yeah. Any other discussion on different priority that were on the list according to our tabulation sheet? Anything that people feel desired on moving? I know there's a couple new items. Well, let's just go from here. Okay, does anybody have any opinions on the priority list that is on the on completion by June 30th, even though all those items cannot be completed by June 30th? Anybody have any comments on any of those? Any comments on the high priorities to complete by December 31st?
Yeah, I think that December 31st is like, are we treating this in 6-month blocks, or would we be better off saying that maybe a 3-month block to reconsider? So maybe come back after June 30th and reevaluate what has been, what hasn't been, and then include that with another group of things priorities that can be done in a 3-month period versus this 6-month. I just think a shorter timetable gives a sense of urgency versus a 6-month timetable.
And not only a sense of urgency, just clarification of where the issues are.
Right.
Because it is apparent that after public input, sometimes these issues move, hence the fence moratorium that we had. Now we decided to bring it back as a whole and focus on safety.
Right, and I think, just to amplify what Councilman Haney said, I think a quarterly review of priorities would be very apropos. I think the idea that you're going to set your priorities for 12 months doesn't take into account the reality. You're going to learn things every quarter. You're going to go through experiences. Other mandates are going to come up. The public's going to express itself. I think a quarterly review makes sense.
Okay. And that was also my question in developing this worksheet, is there's so many components that involve looking at different policy making, that does this seem helpful? I mean, does it seem like I mean, adding more color, a different format? Is this something that we should focus on quarterly? Does this give us a good overview of where issues fall? I mean, I'm just looking for feedback to see if this helps or not.
It's from a staff perspective, it's very helpful. I now know we've sort of agreed as to what you would like the staff to work on, and that gives me a lot of guidance as to what to do. So I can say, there's only so many hours in the day, focus on the top set. and then once we get done with that, we come back, there's another quarter, and we can look at what's left. I think that'd be very helpful.
Okay. Okay. All right, so I guess we should, do you guys even want to look on the unrated ones or the new ones that have come up, or is that just too premature, or?
Well, I mean, just to be pointed about it, we've already implicitly assigned a priority to the leaf blower ordinance tonight. We are going to be discussing Planning Commission pre-meetings at the May 26th workshop.
Right.
I don't think, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, for example, you have finalized priorities for fiscal year 2015-16 there as unrated. Isn't that essentially part of the budget process?
Yes.
So I think some of these things sort of resolve themselves naturally, and that's part of the reason for a quarterly update. And I'm not sure that you talk about an issue like pesticides. Well, how do you rate something like that?
Yeah.
Needs more definition. Are we going to talk, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think we should beat ourselves up too much. This is a good start. Some of the things resolved. That's one of the reasons for a quarterly review.
Great.
I agree.
And if it's okay, I just been, I want this obviously to be a living document. And I want it to be provided not only to us, but at the public, and see what we're working on. And things move, things change, things get more clarity as we move on an issue. And I would like, if it's okay with council, I would like to take a stab on it and see if we could develop any type of protocol with our city manager and providing this information to us in a clear way. Because this is a living document. It's going to be changing as we move on during the year. And so that people know exactly where we're at, if that's okay with the council.
Absolutely. I appreciate your leadership on this. I mean, you're tackling something that most people would have considered unmanageable. So I appreciate you're making great progress on this, and I really appreciate it.
This is your spreadsheet.
Yes.
And so what I'd like to see is how we can coordinate with staff to combine this with something that's workable and manageable, actually, that we could post on our website, and maybe even give the citizens an opportunity to look at what we've evaluated, what we've rated, and project some type of input, just so that we see, we see a group of citizens that come here that want to talk specifically to an issue, but there's a lot of citizens that don't take the time to come here. There's a lot of, that have concerns, just like the few that do come. So so it's interactive, as well as projecting what what our goals are and what our priorities are. So, and it doesn't have to be tomorrow. I'm just thinking that's a start, that's a template, and it's a good start.
Okay. All right, any more feedback, comments? No? All right. So we'll bring it back in 3 months.
Great.
All right, item number 4. City of Ojai crime statistics of 2014.
I won't throw it. Okay?
No, actually, Chief, thank you. Crime statistics. Over to the left, in the middle. Over to the left, on the top, in the middle. Nope, next one.
With the
There.
badge on it, yeah.
There.
Should be drawn to that.
Okay. Mayor, members of council, the information contained in this report was compiled from Sheriff's Crime Analysis records and Ojai Police Department records. Statistics from 2014 are compared with those from previous years, and they're going to include Part 1 and 2 criminal offenses, arrests, Ojai Municipal Code violations, calls for service, police response times, traffic violations, and traffic collisions. Unified crime reports are official data on crime in the United States. For reporting purposes, criminal offenses are divided into 2 major groups, Part 1 offenses and Part 2 offenses. These crimes are reported to the Department of Justice by agencies throughout the country, and they're used by the FBI in their annual Crime in the United States statistical report. So starting with our Part 1 offenses, Attachment A in your packet is a 2-year comparison of the Part 1 offenses, which are considered to be among the most serious. Part 1 offenses are broken down into 2 categories. There's violent crime against persons, and there's violent crime against property. And in 2014, violent crime against persons decreased by 4 cases for a total of 10 cases, and this represents a 29% reduction in violent crime from the previous year. Crime against property in 2014, these actually increased by 15 cases for a total of 120. This gave us a 14% increase in property crime from the previous year. And when you combine both crime against persons and crime against property, there was 11 more Part 1 crimes reported in 2014. That gives us a 9% increase in crime. And the vast majority of the Part 1 crime in 2014 involved theft of property. Moving on, Attachment B will give you a historical perspective of Part 1 offenses in the city of Ojai over the last 23 years. In 1992, the total number of Part 1 crime was 316 compared to 130 in 2014. During the same time period, the number of crimes per 1,000 persons has dropped from a rate of 41.31 per 1,000 persons to the current rate of 17.12 per 1,000 persons in 2014. This is the lowest Part 1 crime rate in the city of Ojai in 23 years, both violent and property crimes. Part 2 offenses, Attachment C will list your Part 2 offenses, which are all other crime classifications other than those defined as Part 1. They include things like simple assaults, sex offenses that doesn't include rape, vandalisms, drug offenses, and many other crimes. In 2014, these increased by 12 cases. It went from 102 to 114. This represents a 12% increase in Part 2 crime. And if you look at this chart, it was felony vandalism and domestic violence accounted for the majority of the increase in Part 2 crime. We look at arrests. Attachment D is going to show you a comparison of arrest activity between the city and unincorporated Ojai Valley areas. In 2014, the number of arrests in Ojai increased 35% from the previous year. It went from 353 to 476 arrests, which is quite a big increase. Most arrests in both Ojai and the Ojai Valley are for misdemeanor violations, and a majority of those that we arrest on misdemeanor violations, they're released on a citation to appear in court. They're not booked or taken to jail. The next part of D, it basically shows you the breakdown of the various violations. These are the total violations in the city and not the total arrests, because oftentimes when we arrest suspects, we charge them with multiple violations. That's why the numbers don't match. And as you can see, narcotic violations accounted for many of the violations in the city, as well as failure to appear warrants and violation of probation warrants. And the same thing holds true in the county, which is the next slide there. The majority were once again narcotics, failure to appears, and violation of probation. Municipal code violations is next. Attachment E shows the breakdown for the individual Ojai municipal code violations. In 2014, the municipal code was enforced 56 times via either arrest or citation. The most common OMC violations in 2014 were 11 violations for consumption of alcohol in a public park, 10 violations for sleeping or camping in a parking lot or a park, 9 violations for consumption of alcohol in public, and 9 violations for skateboard park protective gear. From the city attorney, Scott Howard, 24 of the cases in 2014 were filed as misdemeanors. He also included stats from January of this year through April of this year, where he's added 12 more cases. So we have 36 misdemeanors that he's handling. And he gave me the breakdown that 17 cases resulted in no contest or guilty pleas, with the court imposing probation and stay-away orders either from Libby Park, the arcade, or any other location. 7 cases involving either first-time offenders or an individual with no previous offense in the past 3 years resulted in a dismissal after 6 months of no further misdemeanor or felony arrests. 2 cases resulted in fines. 1 case resulted in probation without a stay-away order. 1 case resulted in a plea with credit of time served. 1 case resulted in a dismissal as a result of a terminal medical condition. 1 case went down to an infraction, and there's 3 outstanding warrants right now, and there's 3 still pending arraignment. The next slide is calls for service. Attachment F illustrates the various calls for service your deputies responded to in 2014 at the request of the public. The most common call for service comes through Sheriff's Dispatch through the 911 Center. In Ventura, other forms of calls can be generated by walk-in reports over at the PD and citizen contacts with officers in the field. In 2014, officers responded to 3,090 calls from the public, and this is an increase of 151 calls from the previous year. Too loud. Okay. The top generating calls for service in 2014 involved suspicious subjects, disturbances, and calls that were non-criminal in nature. And so attachment F will give you a perspective on the types and a number of calls the police received. Moving on to response times, that's attachment G in your package, shows police response times within the city for years 2012 through 2014. The times shown are from the time the call is received in Sheriff's Dispatch Center until the officer arrives at the call. In 2014, the time it took police to respond to emergency calls basically remained unchanged from the previous year. It was 5.4 minutes in 2013 to 5.46 in 2014. Response times to immediate calls increased slightly, went from 5.56 minutes to 6.36. And response times to urgent calls increased as well. It went from 10.31 minutes to 11.98 minutes. Once at the call, the officer spent on average 28, almost 30 minutes resolving the issue. Traffic citations in the city, that's attachment H. List the various traffic violations that were enforced in 2014. Officers issued traffic citations for 451 traffic violations. The most common violations that we cited for were no evidence of registration, there's 128. Driving without a license, there's 61 of those. Failure to stop at a stop sign, 37. No evidence of financial responsibility, 32. Driving while using cell phones was 26. Violation of traffic control markers is 23. And not yielding the right-of-way at crosswalks was 17. The total number of violations written in 2014 is down from the previous year when officers issued citations for 685 violations. Traffic collisions. There were 60 traffic collisions recorded in the city of Ojai. That's a 40% reduction from the previous year. It's quite a reduction. Of the 60 traffic collisions, 34 were classified as non-injury, and the other 26 collisions resulted in injury. We had no fatality traffic collisions in 2014. 4 drivers were found to be under the influence of alcohol. This is a 43% decrease in DUI traffic-related collisions from the previous year. Officers made 26 arrests for driving under the influence in 2014, just so you know. The top 3 traffic collision locations were Ojai Avenue at Country Club Drive, where we had 8. Maricopa Highway, and the stretch that leads up to Carrillo Road, we had 8. Ojai Avenue at Signal Street, we had 6. And the main primary collision factors that we found were unsafe speed, 23. Right-of-way violations were 6, and unsafe starts were 5. And then finally, in 2014, the officers conducted 460 parole and probation searches at residences in both the Ojai and the Ojai Valley. These operations resulted in the arrest of 208 individuals for various crimes. And these are operations that the deputies do during their downtime. There's specific operations where we go out to people's houses and invoke their probation and parole terms to keep them in compliance. So that's it. That's my report.
Great.
I'll entertain any
Thank
questions.
You. Any questions for Chief Kenny?
Quick question on the unlicensed driver and no evidence of current registration incidents. Is that a typical kind of breakdown that you would find in other jurisdictions in this area, wider area, I mean Ventura County? So it's not unusual?
No.
Okay.
I just had two questions. I read assaults at 58. What's an assault? What do we consider an assault?
It would be it would be me, an attack on you, but I don't necessarily need to hit you. If I swung at you and missed, that's an assault, and if I attacked you and hit you, that's also an assault.
It just seemed like that number stood out in that section at 58.
There's a lot.
Right. And then the next question was, do we have a drug problem in Ojai?
Yeah, you drug and alcohol. If you look at the violations, I think there was 80 violations in the city, which was drunkenness. And if you go out into the county, which is 3 times the size and population, it was far less.
Yeah.
So the majority of that is us taking action against the people who hang out in the arcade and in the parks and those type of things.
Okay.
I was just going to ask, is there a group that's getting most of these citations, or is it residents or tourists or?
In regards to the drunkenness and the things of that nature, it's a core group that we've been dealing with, and the city attorney's been giving us the stay away orders. This is the group that we've been dealing with. That's the majority of what you're seeing there.
You know, one other thing that just came to mind was the fact that Signal Street, all the areas that had the high traffic accidents are all streets that have signals.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, saying, yeah, either people are making left turns and someone's not seeing them. And then I was just wondering how this information could be passed on to Complete Streets to help them maybe to identify some traffic areas that we need to look at and help mitigate problems with.
That was my same question.
So
it would be great, since that's a very active group, Complete Streets. I thought the same thing.
Sure.
If there's something that we could possibly implement to reduce even those collisions.
I can share the information, no problem with that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And along those lines, we keep track of these on a pin chart in the PD, and basically when the officers go out to write citations, it's been my direction to them not to just go out and write citations around the city, but to direct their enforcement. We're on these high problem locations, and to write citations for the primary collision factors that we're seeing. And so that's when they go out there and do that. And we did that today, actually. We had a guy out on, that's solely what he did all day long.
Great. Any other questions for Chief Kenny?
Would you care to speculate why the overall reported crime rate has fallen so fairly dramatically, beyond the fact we're just older here?
Great policing, that's
Well,
what it is. It's your contract with the sheriff's department.
Well,
But no.
that goes without saying, of course.
There's a national trend along those lines.
Yes.
So we can't take credit completely, but then there's increases in technology and different things. I think it's a combination of everything. But yeah, it's quite dramatic when you look at how low we are. The lowest in 23 years, in 22 years. That's quite impressive, and that's why when we see a small tick up like this, it can almost be expected, because you can't realistically think that crime is going to go down every year and never come up a little bit.
Yeah.
But overall, Ojai is a very safe place to live, raise a family, visit. So
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Blatzy, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
No. I did have one follow-up questions to the collisions, though. Do you know when the accidents happen? Is it the morning, afternoons, or evening
I don't have that information
Yeah.
with me, but I can get it. I would assume it's probably in the mornings and the evenings when more people are on the road, but I'd have to pull all the reports and get that.
Great, thank you. I think those were all my questions. Any other? No? Great job. And I can invite the public. Anybody have any questions? No? Yeah.
Actually, I do. Steve Foster, Planning Commissioner. There's been some talk just on the street about increase in drugs, and I'm wondering if you could address that and the types of drugs. Is there changes going on in certain segments? The type of drugs, are they getting
drugs.
harder, or is it the same? Or
In my 3 years here, it hasn't varied that much. We're starting to see a little more heroin and that type of a thing. And then with the marijuana, we're seeing higher grades of marijuana as well as concentrated cannabis, and a thing called honey oil, which is the new thing, and it's basically concentrated cannabis, and that's what we've been seeing.
Right.
But as far as people being under the influence and those type of things, it remained relatively the same.
the amount of,
Yeah.
the percentages are pretty much the same?
Mhm.
But you mentioned heroin. Is that something new and different that's circulating? Okay.
No,
Okay.
it affects other
I-
communities as well. All the communities in this county are affected by heroin.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's become something that, when I grew up, you would think it was something that you would see down in Skid Row or something else, and now you can see it in high schools. Okay, and it's a shame, but it's something
It's
we're
out there,
dealing with.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn it back to
I just have
Councilmember
one
Haney.
question, and Chief, thank you. That was great to hear all this information. Do we ever have our fire chief actually come up and do a report regarding readiness?
He will
and-
next week, next
You know,
agenda.
it's funny you should say that, because he actually wanted to do that today, and because of some timing issues, we postponed it till the next meeting, but.
I was just wondering, because we are heading into fire season. It'd be interesting to see what our readiness is, and again, with water restrictions and water being an issue, it'd be interesting to see how that's going to impact them and their ability to perform their work.
Chief Plott has a presentation time up front at the next meeting.
Great. Any more questions for Chief Kenny?
No.
No? Great job. Thank you. This is a receive and file report. So now we're going to adjourn as a council, and then, oh no, there's one more item. Regular meetings to be considered for summer recess cancellation. I'm going to turn it over to staff for a report.
So typically, in order to make business run smoothly, it works best to cancel a meeting and everybody takes their vacation at once. And typically, the council's canceled a couple meetings over the summer at its discretion. So we would just look to you to see what works best for you.
Anybody have input, comments? I mean, my recollection of these canceling, 2 years, it worked pretty well. Last year, we seemed to cancel some meetings, but then we schedule some special meetings.
There's always that risk.
So it's, and then looking at priority, I mean, I always hesitate to cancel any, but it's up to the council to decide.
You may not even want to hear this, but sometimes preparation for a council meeting takes away from our effort at getting the goals done. And having some free time when we're not preparing for a council meeting actually helps.
Any further discussion?
Has there been a pattern from the past that Councilman Haney and I, what's been the typical ton of dates that we've canceled?
There's been, for me, I remember in August and September, there was cancellations on those months. On either one each, but then there was special meeting
Yeah.
called to order in either of those months. So it's up to the council to.
On the issue with the Parks and Recreation Commission, that's always one I would hate to cancel, but how does the timing work with the playground project? And is that joint meeting with Parks and Rec associated at all with the new playground project?
I don't think there's a need for a council meeting in conjunction with that.
Okay, in terms of
So-
awarding,
Well, we will
approving
have
the
to award a
design
bid.
and all that kind of thing?
I'll have to ask the Public Works Director, are you guys consulting on that? Is there a need for a specific date for award of the Libby Park
The
project?
community build.
And I assume that would be something probably in conjunction with Parks and Rec, but maybe not.
I think that primarily we are planning to come back later this month just to discuss the whole process again to make sure everybody's fully aware. But as far as purchasing, we're not awarding this to a contractor.
Right,
It's
it's
all
a-
volunteer builds, so there will be
Right.
purchase of materials, and we'll have to discuss how we do that, whether we sole source or we request bids for the materials, So I'd say that primarily the purchase is going to be a lot of recycled lumber and also maybe some of these modular components we put on the side.
And then, I'm just asking for timing, that we don't put a hole.
Oh,
into
right.
things.
Nope, that's out, yeah, it's, we haven't got the definite schedule, but it must be, we want to build it in October with a possible November build. So we want to make sure those are ordered 2 to 3 months beforehand, so as long as, I think you're still talking about 1 meeting per month, so we should be able to work with that just fine.
Okay, and the same with the Complete Streets process and the neighborhood planning process? Are we going to be looking at any action items for council coming up on that?
I think we definitely work with whatever schedule we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Any other comments? So do we want to cancel one or two meetings? And like I said, what we've done in the past is we've canceled a meeting or two, and if we needed to call a special meeting, we'd do that.
I think staff wants us to cancel too.
Well, it's
I'm just kidding, but I defer to your judgment, Mayor.
I mean, we could cancel the one in September. I'm open to that.
September 8th?
September 8th. Does that work?
Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah, any of them is fine with me.
And then maybe one in August?
Do we want to do August the 11th?
August 11th, I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
And then if we have any urgent issues, then we'll call a special meeting.
Right.
Perfect.
And then I'll move the resolution. Right, we have to pass it?
Yes.
All right, so I'll move the resolution of the city council determining dates of regular meetings to be canceled for the dates mentioned, August 11th, Tuesday, and September 8th, Tuesday. City clerk, is that sufficient?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Roll call. Do we need to, or just say all in favor?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. All right, so that's that.
Hey, can I get a quick clarification in July? It says July 14th and 28th are our meetings? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So there's no items to be considered. Do I still have to adjourn city council and go? Okay, so I'll move to the reports from council members. Any reports? No, I just want to report that Mayor Pro Tem Blatz and I attended the SCAG, which is Southern California Association of Governments conference this last week, and very beneficial. Talked a lot about the arena numbers, subcommittees. I think it was educational. There was a lot of facts on affordable housing. There was a lot of issues on water. And actually, there was a lot of issues about public participation, different things that people are doing. And I heard in one of the breakout sessions that Pepperdine is actually giving grants for public agencies that are wanting to learn how to facilitate public input. $1,000 to $5,000. I thought that was pretty interesting, and they're offering it to anybody that shows any interest. So maybe in the future, staff or council members or commissioners, I think that's obviously a resource to us. But just in general, I thought it was a good conference and would invite any of the council members next year to go. But that's my only report. Any other reports? No? From our city manager?
Speaking of public participation, I wanted to announce that our first public workshop related to the neighborhood planning is scheduled for May 30th from 9 to noon. And it'll be noticed as a council meeting, but the council participation is just observing like everybody else. But it should be a great meeting, a great chance to provide the information that we need to create a vision for each different type of neighborhood that we have in the city.
And that was May 30th?
May 30th.
At Sarasota or?
At Sarasota Park.
Great. Councilmember Wyrick?
Quick question, or suggestion, excuse me. I had a constituent call me with, I thought, an excellent suggestion having to do with the upcoming activities associated with the upcoming workshop on the vacation rental issue. One is, actually, there were two suggestions. One, for the record, is if at all possible, and it may not be, but if it could, that we could have that workshop before everybody scatters with school being out. I believe that would be the first week of June. If it's any possible way to have it no later than that, it may not be, but a lot of people leave town right after school's out, and in terms of maximizing participation, if we could do that, I think it would be very helpful, because we are trying to get that participation. And the second point I want to just raise as a thought, the suggestion was that, even very well noticed and with a lot of preparation, there's a lot of people that have very tight schedules and they're working, and they may not be able to come to the workshop. And perhaps it's an important enough issue we ought to think of maybe putting together some sort of return postcard to gauge public opinion. I'm thinking in terms of properly vetting some kind of alternatives of vacation rentals should be banned, they should be regulated but restricted or not regulated at all. I'm not trying to say that should be the wording, but I'm wondering maybe we want to think about that as an additional tool since it's an important enough issue to consider getting input from the public. I know there's some petitions out there, and it would cost some money, but it might be important enough to consider something like that.
Let me bring those ideas up with the facilitator. He's very concerned about whether people come into the room in a positional state of mind or an interest state of mind, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And he's trying to avoid people just saying, I'm for it or I'm against it, and that's
Right.
my position. He'd rather have people come in and have an open mind and talk about what they'd like the community to be like and the whys.
Right.
And so forth. So I don't want to.
And I probably misspoke, but I mean, at least talk to him perhaps about the idea of some sort of a mail survey as an additional tool. Because I think there is a concern out there, it was expressed to me, that other communities have seen the kind of marketing, the marketing companies like Airbnb. They actually organize the presentations at these workshops to try to skew our perception of what the concerns are in the community. And I think there's a real desire to try to use all available tools to truly gauge the community's opinion about all of this.
Okay.
So, just a thought.
Yeah. Okay. There's also the option of putting a question up to popular social media sites, and there's always a lot of citizens that engage and they're pretty thoughtful, and they expand on their reasoning and why they think an issue should go one way or another. So that's an option too.
You have another thing to ask Mr. Alexander?
Any other comments?
I know we're discussing the facilitator. Did I miss something? We had a consent item here to be discussed about it. Did we table that tonight?
No, we passed it. We passed it. It's just on consent calendar. We didn't. No one pulled it, so we didn't talk about it. But we passed the recommendation from Councilmember Clapp and Councilmember Wyrick on choosing this facilitator for that workshop.
There you go. So I did. It went right over my head, didn't it? Okay, because I was just wondering, we're talking about it, and I went, well, we didn't even discuss it. So I guess we did. I like that idea that Councilman Wyrick brought up about doing some type of a mailer or something to, we represent 7,500 citizens, and it's just not fair that, 10 or 15 that come to a city council meeting get heard over, the other, 7,400 and da-da-da-da-da. So I think it's important that we actually get something out there, and we get it noticed, and that
And maybe, again, it's up to how staff works with the facilitator, but maybe having an evening discussion versus a midday or morning would be beneficial too.
Yes.
So, again, there's a lot of opportunities to get a lot of input and to get a lot of commonality between what we're trying to achieve here, so.
Well, great. Any other, Mayor Pro Tem Blatz? No? Okay, well, thank you, Rob. Interim City Attorney, Mr. Summers?
I don't have anything to add.
Great, thank you. Great.
Welcome aboard
Yes.
soon.
Thank you.
Just quickly, the Amgen Tour California comes through town Thursday, this Thursday, expected to be coming through town 1:10 p.m. to 1:20. So there'll be a rolling blockage of all the streets, so avoid that if you can.
Great, thank you. Any reports from our department head, Mr. Grant?
A real quick one. I want to mention May 27th and 28th, speaking of outreach, we'll be having the Libby Park Community Build outreach. So that'll be open to the public on May 27th from 4 to 7 p.m., trying to get input. The next day, on the 28th, is when they go out and interview all the schools. And that night on the 28th, they'll be having a presentation to the community about what the concept playground will look like. So that's number one. And number two, I want to mention VCTC did award just about a week and a half ago, I think it was, the 2 grants that we requested support from council for. It was a CMAQ grant, which is a congestion mitigation air quality grant through VCTC, and one was for $200,000. It's a transit grant, and that'll pay for new bus shelters around the city. So that was one. And the second one is a $500,000 grant that was for the improvement of all the crosswalks on both Ojai Avenue and Maricopa Highway. So we can look forward to that. Take a while to get them planned. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McClary? No? City Clerk?
Yes, I'd just like to announce that Rob mentioned the joint workshop, and then on May 26th, a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. It's actually going to start at 5:30. I wanted to get that out to the public. And then the joint meeting with the school board's been scheduled for June 16th. And that's the only thing on the agenda that night, so we welcome the public to attend.
Okay, with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.